That messy elder closed his eyes. If you can't find the sacred child of reincarnation, you know the consequences. Grand Shaman bowed and retreated out of the sacred hall with Butcher's lower body. When he walked out of the sacred hall, crunching sounds came from inside the hall, as if there was something eating Shaman King Gyatso's body. Grand Shaman's eyes twitched and a sharp pain came from his waist. He had roughly attached Shaman King Gyatso's body to his, and used his magic power to connect them together. However, their flesh, as well as their bones, tendons, meridians, channels, essence, chi, and blood were not connected to each other. He would have to use secret medicine to fuse them together and turn Gyatso's body into his own body. Ever since he attained Butcher's body, he had thought he could finally advance one more step in his lifetime. Never would he had expected Butcher to be still alive and come look him up. Furthermore, since Grandmaster's corporeal body had withered, he didn't dare to engage in a life and death struggle against Butcher, making him have no choice but to give up Butcher's lower body. Even though Shaman King Gyatso wasn't weak, he still couldn't be compared to Grand Shaman's previous body. If he wanted to cultivate back to his previous realm, he didn't know how long he would have to spend. Grand Shaman bore the pain and brought Butcher's lower body down the mountain. Qin Mu had already come up the mountain along with Butcher, and blind thus they met halfway up the mountain. Grand Shaman placed down Butcher's lower body and greeted, "Heaven Khan." Butcher looked at his lower body and then looked at Grand Shaman's waist and shook his head. "Why bother? I still have to thank you for nurturing my corporeal body for over 200 years and not letting it die." The corners of Grand Shaman's eyes twitched twice. Qin Mu took out that golden lower body and said, "Grand Shaman, I'll return your body to you. There's no point in me keeping it." The muscles of Grand Shaman's face twitched as he replied hoarsely, "I have no use for it. You can refine it into a treasure." Qin Mu asked in goodwill, "I see that your body isn't attached properly. I'm proficient in the art of healing. If Grand Shaman can trust me, I can help you attach it properly. You want to take the chance to harm me?" Grand Shaman sneered and brought his lower body to leave. Qin Mu shook his head and sighed. "All doctors treat patients like their children. I had planned to use his body as warm-up before helping Grandpa Butcher reattach his body." Butcher smiled. "I trust in your medical expertise. If we could go back to find Apothecary and let him do it personally, it would be even better. However, it would take too long to return to Great Ruins." He suddenly shouted, "Old fellow, are you still alive?" His loud voice reverberated throughout the entire mountain. An ancient and sharp voice came from Roland's Golden Palace. "Don't worry, if Heaven Khan isn't dead yet, how would I be dead? This old ghost is actually still alive." Butcher laughed coldly. "I'll make you die sooner or later. Let's go." Qin Mu carried Butcher's lower body, and the three of them went down the mountain. Blind turned back to have a look at the mountain and seemed to be deep in his thoughts. "That person inside is very strong." Butcher let out a sigh and smiled. "I reckon I'm not his opponent without my lower body. That's why you have to accompany me here to deal with him. This old fellow has reincarnated 17 times and lived through 18 lifetimes. His lifespan has probably hit 10,000 years, yet he still doesn't die. I had fought him a few times and he's very powerful." Qin Mu cried out, "Lived through 18 lifetimes? A lifespan of 10,000 years? How is this possible? How is it not possible? You should have seen gods and devils who have lived much longer than 10,000 years in Great Ruins, am I right? Actually, there are many scary things in this world. However, you are still young now and can't come into contact with these kinds of existences." Butcher continued, "That old thing may not be a devil or god, but he isn't far from them. He knows a lot about the past and many secrets. If he wasn't an enemy, I wouldn't have stood against him." Blind nodded his head. "There are indeed some terrifying existences. For example, my eyes." He shook his head and didn't say any more. Qin Mu's heart trembled slightly. Blind's eyes were dug out by someone, but Blind had never told people who exactly did it. What was the secret behind this? When they left Roland's Golden Palace and regrouped with Ling Yuxiu, they went to a barbarian city on the prairie. Qin Mu bought a few medicinal ingredients in the city and took out a huge cauldron from his sack. "Grandpa Butcher, I would have to boil your lower body first to remove the blood of Grand Shaman and the shaman poison within it." He poured a huge jar of water into the cauldron and placed the medicinal ingredients into the water one by one. When the water started boiling and gave off medicinal fragrance, he then placed Butcher's body into the water. Hu Linger was worried. Would it be cooked? Blind beamed and said, "When you smell the fragrance of meat, it would be cooked." Butcher retorted angrily, "My body can't even die after getting severed by a god, so how would it be cooked from just a pot of boiling water?" After boiling it for some time, Qin Mu observed the color of the medicinal water and opened up a medicine goblet to pinch out a few black and red toads that were dried up. They were all the same size of a fingernail and they got scattered into the cauldron. The toads were already dried up, but when they entered the water, they were revived and darted around in the boiling water, absorbing the shaman poison. Not long later, the few toads died from poisoning. Qin Mu changed another cauldron of water and followed the same steps again for 9 times to refine the shaman poison out completely. He saw the blood in Butcher's lower body regaining its red color, and his blood came circulated in his blood vessels automatically as though it was alive. Qin Mu boiled another cauldron of water and changed over a dozen medicinal ingredients to excite the activity of his flesh and blood all the way until late at night. Ling Yuxiu and the little fox had already fallen asleep. The green bull had also gone to sleep while Blind was sitting on the floor, snoozing as he leaned on his bamboo cane. Only Qin Mu and Butcher were still guarding beside the cauldron. Qin Mu pulled out his junior protector sword and passed it to Butcher. "Grandpa Butcher, I am unable to cut your body, so you would have to do it yourself. You have to cut away the flesh membrane which has grown over your upper body. There's no need to use your sword. I will use my knife." Butcher pulled out his pig slaughtering knife and gritted his teeth as he gave a slice and sliced off the flesh membrane which had grown over his wounds. His cultivation was strong, therefore. He was able to use his vital qi immediately to seal his wounds and not let them bleed. Qin Mu pulled out the lower body from the cauldron. The wound on the lower body was still fresh, so he had no need to slice it. Qin Mu took out jade bottles and carefully smeared the dragon's saliva on the cross-sections of the upper and lower body. The moment he smeared the dragon's saliva, he could see flesh sprouting out rapidly as though they were small red worms wiggling non-stop. He didn't connect the 2 sections of the body immediately, and had instead refined his vital qi into threads to pick out all the tendons and nerves to reconnect them first. The vital qi threads on his palm increased in number as they connected every flesh, every membrane, the intestines, the spines, and gradually fused the body together. However, the skin at the waist had yet to grow out. Qin Mu finally applied some dragon's saliva on his wound, and the skin also grew back naturally, closing up the wound. He raised his spirits and carried Butcher up and placed him in the medicinal cauldron. He placed the last packet of medicinal ingredients into the cauldron and brought the water to a simmer. In the cauldron, Butcher leaned his arms by the side and suddenly said, "Muir, thanks for all the hard work." Qin Mu shook his head and smiled. "I had learned the art of healing from Grandpa Apothecary for so many years, and all my skills are taught by Grandpa Apothecary. It can't be considered hard. I hope you won't have a messy reputation like Apothecary did." The water slowly came to a boil and Butcher let out a mouthful of white mist. "That's right. I kept seeing you take things out from that little cloth sack. Even this cauldron was taken out from the sack. There's something weird with your sack. Let me have a look." Qin Mu handed over that sack and said, "I picked up this sack in Roland's Golden Palace. I don't know how, but there's an area of 1 acre in the sack, so I have used it to store items." Butcher opened the sack and took a look inside before giving a weird expression. "Muir, it seems like you have picked up quite a lot of items from the treasury of Roland's Golden Palace." Qin Mu's face turned slightly red. "You can learn from Cripple, but you cannot be addicted." Butcher sighed. "Actually, we all have our own bad habits in the village. Cripple likes to steal, Apothecary frequently poisons people, and flirts everywhere. As for me, I was too arrogant in the past and raised my knives against the heavens. Blind is supercilious and frivolous, Deaf is too proud, Mute has his own way of thinking and tells no one about it. Don't talk about village chief, acting like he's a profound mystery, and Granny is a troublemaker. I'm scared that you learned all our bad points." Qin Mu said solemnly, "Don't worry, Grandpa Butcher. Ever since I was out from the village, I have yet created trouble. Patriarch is very pleased with me." "In that case, that's good. You can create trouble, but you will need to be able to settle it." Butcher shook the sack and smiled. "I have seen this sack before, and it's called Taotai sack, and it's made out of Taotia's skin. There should be a pure-blood Taotai in great ruins, and if our villagers take it on together, we might be able to defeat it. The skin used to make this Taotai sack isn't from a pure-blood Taotai, but its lineage could be considered extremely high. The Taotai sack I saw in the past has only 10 feet in diameter, and not many things can be put inside. It should have been made out of the skin of a strange beast who has the Taoyes bloodline. So I see. Qin Mu was astonished and immediately asked, I have seen some houses that don't look big from the outside yet have an enormous space inside. How did this happen? That's simple. By grinding the bones of strange beasts that have the Taoyes bloodline and mix it into the cement, mixing it into the paint is fine as well. In this way, the internal space would become bigger. Butcher said. Taotai is a divine beast, a kind of dragon. This divine beast only eat and don't shit, therefore the space in its stomach is very wide. Its skin would be used to create Taotai sack, while its bones would be used to build the house. There are many ways to use it, however. There are 2 little pure-blood ones. Qin Mu stayed at his side and they both chit-chat until Qin Mu fell asleep without knowing. When he woke up, he realized that the fire under the cauldron had extinguished. He was about to rekindle the fire when Butcher's voice sounded out from the side. Muir, there's no need for that. I feel that there are no major problems with my body now. Qin Mu immediately looked back and saw Butcher had already dressed up. He wore a new pant, which was the one Qin Mu had made earlier after buying some fabric while he was getting the medicinal ingredients. This elder wore a loose Chinese gown on his upper body, and the messy beard stubbles were all cleanly shaved, making him look refreshed. Butcher looked at him up and down and nodded his head repeatedly. You have already grown up. We helped you in the past and now you can already help us. That's good, that's good. Blind's voice came from outside. The one that slaughters pigs. If you continue talking, you won't be able to leave. Your disciple has already caught up. Butcher walked out and said, There's a hand bone of a god in your Taotai sack which I will be keeping for you. You can't bring this thing around with you, that god is still alive. If you take it with you, it will just bring you disaster. Qin Mu was shocked. The owner of the hand bone is still alive? I chopped it off back then from the heavens, so of course he's still alive. Butcher and Blind walked in a line and gradually went further away. Even though their footsteps were slow, their speed was very fast. Butcher's voice came from the distance. This was the hand I exchanged my lower body for. However, the divine flesh on it seems to have been stripped off and turned into spirit pills for consumption. Thus only the bones are left. Muir, remember to come back to the village to celebrate the new year. Blind's voice also came from afar. Qin Mu saw them off and gave a smile. He waved towards the shadow of their backs. I will definitely be back for New Year. Blind seemed to see him waving and raised his arms to wave back without even turning back his head. Grandpa Blind sure is powerful, Qin Mu exclaimed, to be able to see so clearly despite being so far. Not long later, a massive voice came from far away and echoed through the skies of the prairie. Junior brother Qin, Qin. Qin Mu heard that it was Chancellor Ba Shan's voice and immediately shouted, I'm over here. That voice still continued to shout, Imperial Academician Qin, Qin. Qin Mu replied again, yet Chancellor Ba Shan's voice was still calling out from afar, and he came to a realization. Chancellor Ba Shan is probably still a few hundred miles away from here. His voice is able to reach here, but my voice can't reach him. Ling Yuxiu woke up and immediately said, Cowherd, let me do it. When she finished saying, she waved her hand and released a flame divine art, shooting a fireball into the sky which exploded with surging heat waves. Qin Mu praised that she was clever in his heart and smiled. It's useless. He is still a few hundred miles away from here, so he can't see it. Hu Linger and the Green Bull also woke up. The Green Bull looked around and couldn't find Butcher and Blind. He asked, Where's old master? They've left. Qin Mu still heard Chancellor Ba Shan shouting to him in all kinds of manner inside. Chancellor Ba Shan's vocals sure are huge and he really could talk. It was very hard to imagine how such a rough man could be able to be so talkative. Qin Mu said, Let us go to the direction of the borders. If Chancellor Ba Shan can't find us, he will definitely head there. The Green Bull showed his true form and Qin Mu brought Hu Linger up the bull's back. Ling Yuxiu also jumped up. The Green Bull took a step and sprinted towards the borders. Qin Mu looked at the girl beside him and asked, Have your injuries healed? Ling Yuxiu nodded her head. Even the scar is gone. Look, I had a cut on my waist originally, and it's now completely healed. She pulled up her clothes and revealed her waist while turning to the side. Right here. Her skin was very exquisite and her waist was also very white. She probably hadn't tanned by the sun before. Qin Mu's skin was originally darker as he frequently swam naked in surging river during summer, exposing himself to the hot sun. Sometimes he even got pursued relentlessly by the huge fish monsters that were on his tail. Now that he had come to Imperial College, Qin Mu had no more chances to run around naked, so his skin had gradually lightened up. However, when compared to Ling Yuxiu, Qin Mu was still slightly darker. Qin Mu stretched out a finger and touched the location of her wound. He could still feel a bump on the wound. Ling Yuxiu felt ticklish and giggled. Qin Mu said, "Don't move. I'll help you dissolve the clotted blood, otherwise, there will always be a bump here." Ling Yuxiu immediately stopped moving and held her shirt up. Qin Mu transformed his vital qi into green dragon vital qi, and threads of vital qi came out from the tip of his finger, carefully piercing into her skin to dissolve the clotted blood. Ling Yuxiu only felt numb and ticklish, which made her giggle again. "You are making me ticklish. There's a ticklish spot there." Qin Mu didn't raise his head and said, "Bear with it. It won't be ticklish in a moment and it would feel slightly painful." After a moment, Ling Yuxiu felt a needle-piercing pain and immediately looked down. She only saw Qin Mu using his nature fragrance silk's handkerchief to wipe away the clotted blood that was flowing out. When the clotted blood had flowed out, there was no trace left on the skin. Ling Yuxiu pulled down her shirt and blinked her eyes innocently. "Divine Physician, there are still some wounds on my back. I don't know if they will leave scars." Hu Linger replied loud and clearly, "I smeared the wounds on your back, and before I applied the medicine, I had already squeezed out the clotted blood for you. They won't leave any scars." Ling Yuxiu looked at her, and the little fox was smiling very sweetly. And very fake. Vixen. Both of them thought at the same time. Hu Linger blinked her eyes. "Sister Yuxiu, how old are you this year?" Ling Yuxiu's gaze flickered and asked, "How old are you?" "I'm 12. "I'm 16. "You're 1 year older than young master." Ling Yuxiu had a feeling that a little fox had pounced on her and gave her 2 stabs in her aching heart. This fox may be a little thing, but her moves were ruthless and unexpected, making her unable to defend herself. She had long noticed that this little fox harbored evil designs. Making her way onto Qin Mu's bed every night and acting as if she didn't know anything, she hadn't a reserved manner and acted shamelessly cute. And now, this little hussy had already started to go on the offense. Ling Yuxiu may be unconstrained and looked like a big-hearted girl that was outspoken and straightforward unlike other girls, but she also had her own meticulous side. She smiled sweetly. "Sister Ling, the furs on your paws are really soft. Why didn't you try to turn them into human hands?" Hu Linger yawned and squinted her eyes. "Young master likes it this way." "Sister Ling, why haven't you shapeshifted?" "Young master likes it this way. Look at your eyes, which are different from ours." "Young master likes it this way." Ling Yuxiu had lost the battle. This little fox had an impenetrable defense which struck back after blocking. It was like Great Thunderclap Monastery's divine art. Flowers in the mirror which could reflect other people's attacks back at them. Whom did this vixen learn from? Ling Yuxiu wasn't her opponent and was slightly angry. Hu Linger was proud of herself. In Rain Listening Pavilion, she had consulted the maidens of Rain Listening Pavilion regarding the techniques of this field. Ling Yuxiu suddenly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was actually being jealous of a little fox. She had truly lost the awe of the imperial family. She had the figure, and even though Qin Mu was slightly blind to say that she was slightly chubby, her appearance wasn't bad. No matter how incisive the little fox's moves were, she had not shapeshifted. Victory was already firmly grasped in her hands, and there was completely no need to be jealous of that vixen. Before they had yet to reach the borders, Chancellor Ba Shan had finally caught up with them. When he saw Butcher had already left, this strong man couldn't help falling into a daze, crying loudly and cursing Heaven Knife at the same time. Qin Mu consoled him for a moment and said, "It's not that he doesn't miss you, he just dislikes your nagging, therefore, he went first. Actually, Grandpa Butcher cares about you very much. When he heard you were in danger, he was the first one to rush over." Stop crying, we're reaching the border station." How can Marshal Khan be seen sobbing like a little girl? Chancellor Ba Shan wiped his tears and poured out his woes to him. He started telling Qin Mu about everything and anything. Ever since he was a child, he had to stand still as punishment for wetting his bed. Every single detail of his cultivation, helping Heaven Knife wash his undergarments, how Heaven Knife had brought him to steal duck soup from the neighboring village. Qin Mu looked at Ling Yuxiu pleadingly, and she shrugged her shoulders helplessly. Imperial College. The young patriarch packed his stuff silently into a small bundle, and threw his ribbon attached to the official seal on the floor. Hanging up his official seal on the door of the Hall of Supreme Learning, he took a last glance at Imperial College and gave a smile. Elder of Discipline walked over in quick steps and carried a bamboo basket that was not very big. In the bamboo basket were an umbrella and items like scrolls and books. "Let's go, there's no need to alarm the others," the young patriarch smiled. The two of them walked down the mountain without alarming anyone, and when they reached the bottom of the mountain, that dragon Qilin immediately stood up and wagged his tail. "My life is coming to an end and I can't bring you along anymore." The youth caressed the head of this dragon Qilin and shook his head. "If you follow me, you'll just be waiting for me to die of old age. Little friend, you're free." Gotcha. The chain on the dragon's Qilin's neck opened up and this dragon Qilin looked at him blankly. He shook his head and asked, "Old master, if I can't follow you, where can I go? You were originally living freely, so where can you not go?" The young patriarch waved his hand and looked at the Imperial College which he had built up personally, having a hint of reluctance in his eyes. He suddenly turned around and left. "Spending my last years here, yet I'm leaving here today. I do not wish to die of old age in Imperial College." The old and the young headed out of the capital city, and once they were out of the city, the young patriarch asked Elder of Discipline to stay back as he walked towards that person by himself. "Dao friend." Imperial Preceptor greeted. "Are you going to leave just like this? Are you not going to ask for your dismissal from the Emperor?" The young patriarch smiled. "When I assumed the position effortlessly, I had not come for the Emperor, so why do I have to leave for the Emperor? I'm very happy that you had invited me here, and have come to send me off now." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor sighed ruefully. "Dao friend can already face death in the eyes. I wonder how many years do I have to cultivate to be able to reach the height of your frame of mind. Let me send you off." Both of them walked forward side by side while Elder of Discipline followed not far behind. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, "When I knew you were leaving, I felt a big piece missing from my heart. No one knows me better than you in this world. Without you, I have one less person I can talk to." The young patriarch said, "You have great ambitions and your future is paved with difficulties. The path you are taking is filled with bumps and there's nothing I can teach you. You'll have to rely on yourself." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor stopped. "Back then I wanted to acknowledge you as my teacher. Why didn't you accept me?" The young patriarch said calmly, "I knew you would be better than me and have higher attainments than me in the future, so I don't deserve to be your teacher, therefore, I can't take you in as my disciple. The things you have thought of were things I had never thought before. They are things I would never have accomplished in my entire lifetime. I have also learned many things from you, therefore, I can't be your teacher." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor took a stride forward and followed him. "I'm still slightly perplexed and exhausted lately. Say, is the path we are taking an orthodox one? In the eyes of the so-called orthodox path, the road we are going down on isn't the orthodox path." The young patriarch stopped and looked at him in the eyes. "We established primary schools, colleges, and Imperial College to reform the sects and gathered the teachings of numerous sects to teach scholars, to treat commoners and disciples of sects as equals. In their eyes, we are straying from the orthodox path and are committing an unforgivable sin. However, in our eyes, this is the orthodox path. Don't care what the others say, what's right is right. Don't let the furious barkings of others turn it wrong." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's body trembled slightly. "The things you want to do are too big and the road ahead is filled with thistles and thorns. My life is coming to an end and I can't help you anymore. You'll have to rely on yourself." The young patriarch smiled slightly. "Go back." Eternal Peace clasped his hands together and bowed to the ground. "Thank you, Dao friend, for half of a lifetime of support." The young patriarch returned his greeting. "Since we are walking on the same path, we naturally have to support each other." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor turned around to leave. with his clothes fluttering in the wind, disappearing into the boundless sea of people in the capital city. The young patriarch rose and called Elder of Discipline over. Let's go. It's time for the young cult master to ascend to power. At the borders of the Great Wall, Chancellor Ba Shan's expression turned grim as he brought Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu into the frontier stockade, feeling very displeased in his heart. When that barbarian general that was on duty saw them coming, his expression changed and he went forth. Marshal Khan, the sacred ground has ordered not to let you out of the borders when we see you. Chancellor Ba Shan had an icy gaze as he asked coldly, "Do you want to die?" That barbarian general felt a shiver down his spine and looked around. Chancellor Ba Shan swept his gaze at all the generals around and asked coldly, "Do you all want to die?" That barbarian forced himself to shout, "Open the gates!" The gates opened and Chancellor Ba Shan rode the bull out of the borders. Qin Mu looked back and can't help crying out in surprise when he saw a barbarian youth on top of the city gate tower practicing his punches, which were so vigorous that wind was formed. That barbarian youth saw someone was peeping and immediately kept his stance to look down. "This youth is very strong and has an extremely strong foundation," Qin Mu exclaimed in admiration. That youth turned his gaze over and light shone from his eyes as he shouted, "Marshal Khan! My name is Pangong Tso, the son of the Prairie King. I will definitely defeat Marshal Khan in the future and become the overlord of the prairie." Chancellor Ba Shan turned back and sized up that barbarian youth, praising him. "Great spirit, continue to train. You're a seedling with a good foundation. Show me your series of punches again." Pangong Tso executed another series of punches and Chancellor Ba Shan told Qin Mu, "This child has great control over his fist skills and his power was much fiercer than other people. The aptitude of his body was very extraordinary, and he will definitely become a very capable person." Qin Mu nodded his head. The same moves, the same cultivation, yet the punches of some people would be stronger than others. This was their gifted talent that others could never get but envy. "I'm impressed. As long as he doesn't die, he would definitely become a well-known figure on the prairie." As they walked toward Qingmen Pass, Pangong Tso's spirits rose after receiving Chancellor Ba Shan's praise and trained even harder. Not long later, a ray of golden light flashed across the sky and a shaman king landed. With a grim face, he summoned the general on duty over and asked, "You have let the Marshal Khan out?" That general on duty braced himself and said, "Marshal Khan has immeasurable power, so how would I dare to block him? If we block him with force, I'm afraid there would be a disastrous amount of casualties in our border station, and it would be difficult for us to defend against Eternal Peace's army." That shaman king gave a cold snort and was about to blow up when he suddenly saw Pangong Tso, who was practicing his punches on the city gate tower. He was surprised and delighted as he pointed towards Pangong Tso to ask, "Whose child is that?" "The young son of our barbarian D Empire's Supreme Khan, Prince Pangong Tso." That shaman king gave a smile and reached out to grab him from afar. Pangong Tso's body flew over uncontrollably and landed in front of him. Great aptitude. This is the extraordinary constitution that Grand Shaman is looking for. That shaman king sized him up and gave a satisfied expression. The sacred child of reincarnation which Grand Shaman ordered us to find has finally been found by me. Pangong Tso, follow me. The general on duty was startled and wanted to stop him, but that shaman king had already turned into a ray of golden light and brought Pangong Tso away. When he brought Pangong Tso back to Roland's golden palace, he sent this little prince to Grand Shaman. Grand Shaman also couldn't help being surprised and delighted. He immediately brought Pangong Tso to the sacred hall and bowed. "Grandmaster, the sacred child of reincarnation is found. He has the same constitution as Grandmaster. He is a rare talent that could only be found once every few hundred years on the prairie. Grandmaster can reincarnate now." A mournful laugh came from the shrine and suddenly a bony monster flew out. With his head below and legs above, he stuck himself to Pangong Tso head to head. A world-shaking boom sounded out in Pangong Tso's mind, and his soul was obliterated. Essences continuously surged forth from that monster's body into Pangong Tso's body. At the same time, that Grandmaster's soul was also shifting and planting itself into Pangong Tso's body. "Disciple, when I reincarnate, the one that should die doesn't die and the one that should live doesn't live. This alters fate and defies the natural order, so the messenger of death will be coming to capture my soul. Set up the formation properly to block the messenger of death. Grand Shaman immediately went forward and took out the shrines to place them around Pangongtso. On the shrines were the skeletons from the past 17 lifetimes which were left behind by the Grandmaster and refined into magical artifacts. Suddenly, the space trembled as a chill wind blew over from another space and time. The fire in this sacred hall immediately dimmed as a small boat slowly floated over from another space and time. That was a dark world, and the only source of light seemed to be from the green lamp hanging on the bow of the small boat. The green lamp was dim, and there was an elder sitting under it and folding paper boats and paper humans. The boat slowly floated towards the sacred hall. Grand Shaman was extremely anxious and immediately poured all of his magic powers into the shrines. In the shrines, that 17 golden skeletons seemed to have come to life and stood in a line between the entrance of the other world and their actual world. The elder sitting on the boat was surrounded by boundless darkness, and looking from his angle, other than his lamp which was lighted up in his world, the only other light was from the entrance to the other world, and that entrance was currently blocked by 17 skeletons. He raised his hand, and the paper humans and paper horses seemed to come alive as the paper humans rode on the paper horses which sprinted towards the entrance blocked by the golden skeletons. Meanwhile, the paper humans on the horsebacks were swinging their paper knives and paper swords. They opened their mouths and seemed to be shouting ferociously, but no sound came out. The 17 skeletons moved together at once and engaged in a scuffle with the paper humans and paper horses which had come rushing over. These 17 golden skeletons formed a formation which had immense power, and allowed the formation to unleash a might that rivaled the gods. However, the power from the other world was abnormally terrifying. When the paper knives and paper swords came slashing down, even the golden skeletons of the Grandmaster couldn't defend against them. A knife could easily sever a bone, and a sword could easily stab through their skulls. Grand Shaman controlled the 17 golden skeletons and held on desperately to hold off the attacks of the paper humans and paper horses. Meanwhile, the Grandmaster sped up his reincarnation, yet he saw the small boat from the other world getting closer and closer. The elder on the boat had already picked up the lantern and stood up. Sweat broke out across Grand Shaman's forehead as he saw the small boat had already floated at the way over, and was about to cross over from the other world to their actual world. Meanwhile, the elder holding the lamp had stretched his hand out as though he wanted to stretch his hand out from the other world to pull the reincarnating Grandmaster to that world. Suddenly, Grandmaster's body turned stiff and he dropped down from midair without a breath remaining, while Pangongtso opened up his sparkling black eyes. Just as his eyes opened up, the connection between the two worlds crumbled. The paper humans and paper horses incinerated by themselves and turned into ashes in an instant. Meanwhile, the hand that had stretched out from the other world had gradually pulled back and vanished. In the sacred hall, the fire suddenly brightened again, and the dimness earlier had disappeared without a trace. Pangongtso let out a sigh of relief and smiled. "I've finally succeeded. Congratulations, Grandmaster." Grand Shaman bowed. Pangongtso waved his hand and Grand Shaman retreated. Closing the door to the hall, he let out a sigh. If not for Grandmaster's old age and weak body, how would he let Heaven Knife slaughter his way up? Now that Grandmaster had reincarnated, he could finally live through another lifetime. This way, there would be no need to worry about Eternal Peace Empire, and Heaven Knife wouldn't be a problem as well. In Qingmen Pass, Qin Mu threw 2 jade bottles to Chancellor Bashan before going off to buy some spirit herbs to refine pills. "Young Master, Patriarch is looking for Young Master." Qin Mu finished grabbing his herbs, and that shop assistant of the medical store said, "Young Master, please leave the pass as soon as possible and head towards Harmony Prefecture." Qin Mu was slightly stunned and nodded his head. He returned to the inn and refined out a cauldron of spirit pills to heal injuries for Chancellor Bashan. He called Hu Linger over and left the border without a word, heading towards Harmony Prefecture. Ling Yuxia was currently bathing, and when she was done, Qin Mu had disappeared without a trace. She couldn't help being surprised and immediately went to ask Chancellor Bashan. Chancellor Bashan also didn't know when Qin Mu had left and told her after some thinking, "Princess, there's no need to worry. The fox isn't here as well, so this means that junior brother wasn't kidnapped and has left with the fox." Ling Yuxia was slightly disappointed. Qin Mu did not tell her a thing and left quietly this time. Was there a need to be so mysterious? What could he not say? Chancellor Ba Shan consumed the spirit pills and rose. Princess, let us return to Imperial College. Calculating the time we have been out, Grand Chancellor should be resigning soon. The new Grand Chancellor should be assuming position soon too. Let us return earlier. Grand Chancellor has always been looking after me. I must see him off at least. Ling Yuxiu understood. Meanwhile, at this moment, Qin Mu had brought Hu Linger forward and they got closer to Harmony Prefecture. On their journey there were turmoil and chaos of war everywhere. There would be sects announcing the emperor had gone down the wrong path and mistakenly allowed the treacherous imperial preceptor to bring a great turmoil to the whole world. Therefore, the sects revolted and wanted to purge the wrong in the name of justice. When he came to Luo City, which was beside Harmony Prefecture, there were battles everywhere in Luo City. The people had no way to make a living and the armies were quelling the rebellions everywhere. However, it was like they were trying to stop water from boiling, having not much use. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had let these flames burn too furiously. Most of the officials that formed Eternal Peace Empire's council were experts from numerous sects, and now that these sects had rebelled, these officials had rebelled together. The foundation of the empire had shaken, and it was already very difficult to suppress the revolt. What method does Imperial Preceptor have to pacify the chaos in the world? Qin Mu was bewildered. If it continues this way, I'm afraid all of the sects in this world will revolt. When that time comes, even if Eternal Peace Empire is able to pacify the rebellion, it would suffer a huge loss in power. This was something Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor would definitely not be willing to see. If Eternal Peace Empire suffered a huge loss in power, how could he pacify the other countries around Eternal Peace Empire, and how could he occupy great ruins to attain an achievement of a lifetime? In the border of Luo City, Qin Mu was just a passerby and he met over 10 groups of bandits attacking him. Some of the bandits were unsettled divine arts practitioners while some were the officials of Luo City who had turned into bandits to occupy the hills to act as lords. He relied on his fast speed and executed cripples' heavenly pilfering leg skill when he couldn't defeat them, therefore, he was pretty safe. If Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor is able to pacify this rebellion and subdue or eliminate all of the Empire's opposing forces, Eternal Peace Empire would be fully united, and that would be extremely terrifying. Qin Mu couldn't help exclaiming in admiration at what he saw on the way. There were already countless of divine arts practitioners in just Luo City, and one could imagine just how many divine arts practitioners there were in the Empire. Now Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was unable to use these powers, but once the rebel forces were eliminated or subdued, there won't be a decrease in Eternal Peace Empire's strength as a whole, and there would be a great increase instead. Finally, he came to Harmony Prefecture and it was different from Luo City. Harmony Prefecture looked to be in peace and prosperity, while the citizens were living in peace and worked happily. Qin Mu passed by the fields and saw a few martial arts practitioners executing spells, turning the wind into wind blades to harvest the crops for the farmers. Qin Mu stopped to take a look and saw those few martial arts practitioners cultivated spells from Heavenly Devil Cult. They controlled the wind to help a few families finish harvesting their crops, and went to the families to settle the bill afterward. One of the girls said, "Don't dry your rice crops today. There would be rain later in the evening." Those few families gave their thanks repeatedly. These few practitioners saw Qin Mu standing over at the side of the field and were feeling peculiar. That girl came forward and stopped not far away from Qin Mu before greeting. "Senior brother, what's the matter?" Qin Mu smiled warmly and asked, "Are you from the Wind Hall?" That girl was astonished and didn't dare to answer him. Qin Mu smiled. "I had seen the spell you had used earlier with spring wind traveling close to the ground, therefore I asked. Was Wind Hall Master the one that taught you this move?" That girl hesitated for a moment and said, "It's Wind Hall Master Lei Zhengyin." Qin Mu asked curiously, "Wind Hall Master didn't teach you this move completely?" Other martial arts practitioners came forward and a youth shook their head. "Wind Hall Master only taught us a few moves once in a while. He would normally teach once and not anymore, therefore we had not learned them completely." Qin Mu circulated his vital qi and turned it into green dragon vital qi while smiling. "I just have the time, let me teach you. Take a look." He executed his green dragon vital qi beside the field and exhibited spring wind traveling close to the ground, and they saw wind blades that were like curved knives slithering in the field like snakes. With 100 wind blades close to the ground, They sprinted towards the legs of the enemies. This move isn't merely just to have blades sticking close to the ground. You can also do it this way. Qinmu suddenly tapped his feet on the ground and jumped up. The tips of his feet then landed on the rapidly whirling wind blade and rushed forward while being carried by the wind blade. He stood on the wind blade and executed spells at the same time as he attacked. Hundreds of wind blades whooshed forward and covered a radius of 20 yards as they sliced forward. Even though spring wind traveling close to the ground was an ordinary spell, its power wasn't small. On the contrary, with a move like this, the power of great educational heavenly devil scriptures could be seen from the different ways of utilizing the move. Qinmu landed on the ground and dispersed the spells. The few youths were surprised and delighted. Wind Hall Master had never taught us this kind of move by stepping on the wind blade. They immediately consulted him and Qinmu sat down beside the field to answer all their queries. He explained the marvel of the circulation of this spell, and how to control the magic power finally. There are still some variations to this move, and the wind blade doesn't necessarily need to stick close to the ground. Qinmu once again executed spring wind traveling close to the ground and suddenly trembled his fingers. The wind blades turned vertical and attacked upwards. The path of spells is actually interlinked with sword skills and battle techniques. Even though spring wind traveling close to the ground is a spell, it can also transform into sword techniques or battle techniques. He suddenly took out a knife pellet and gave it a gentle tremble. The curved knives flew out from the knife pellet and executed spring wind traveling close to the ground as well. Even though the variation of the move couldn't be compared to spell, its power was increased several times. Qinmu wielded two curved knives and the knife lights suddenly expanded. His hands moved up and down and the knife lights traveled forward close to the ground. The move he had executed was actually spring wind traveling close to the ground as well, and the power was even stronger than the knife pellet by a few times. Qinmu retracted his knives and the curved knives came flying back into the knife pellet one after another. Turning his head back, the few youths were stunned from the sight. Qinmu gave a smile and asked, "Have you understood?" A girl muttered. "How can a spell turn into a knife skill into a battle technique? Even Hallmaster Lei can't execute it." Qinmu guided patiently. "Who set the rule that spell must only be used as a spell? Why can't it be used as knife skill? And using it as a battle technique is also letting nature take its course. When you cultivate spells, there's no need for you to keep to the old-fashioned ways and be constrained to other people's experience." The few youths were deep in thoughts. Qinmu explained the essence of this skill for a few more times, and when they had learned it completely, he asked, "Don't you go to school? I see you are still young, so why aren't you seeking knowledge in primary school?" A youth replied sadly, "Poor. Where do you have the money to attend school? We can only earn some money during the busy farming season. Sacred Cult taught us spells, sword skills and battle techniques to let us earn a living and not starve to death." "I see." Qinmu seemed to think of something when a familiar voice suddenly came over. "You taught well and they learned well." Qinmu immediately turned back and saw the person who was talking. He immediately greeted, "Patriarch, Elder of Discipline, when have you arrived?" He didn't know when the young Patriarch appeared in the distance and Elder of Discipline was following behind him. Elder of Discipline smiled. "We've been here for a while. We passed by here and saw you teaching them spells, so we stood and listened at the side without interrupting." The young Patriarch praised. "Now I feel passing great educational heavenly devil scriptures to you was an incomparably right choice. It's already considered remarkable for others who cultivate it to understand great educational heavenly devil scripture. They could at most develop one or two uses from a spell, yet you could think of so many different uses." "Good, very good." Qinmu was bewildered. Shouldn't spells be used this way? The young Patriarch smiled. "They should be. It's just that the previous cult masters were too dumb and didn't think of these kinds of usages. Let us go." Qinmu acknowledged and brought Hu Linger to follow them to Harmony Prefecture City. "Aya, I've forgotten to ask who was he?" A girl suddenly cried out. Those few youths looked at Qinmu and the rest walking further and further away. A youth muttered, "Just now he called one young Patriarch and the old man Elder of Discipline, so who could he be? His knowledge is even higher than Hallmaster Lei. He must be an important figure in our sacred cult." On the way, Qinmu saw some more heavenly devil cult's disciples using spells to dig canals, and there are also some who were using spells to plow the ground, using spells to fly up the tree to pluck fruits. However, these disciples were not proficient in their spells and most of them had not learned the spells completely. This time Qin Mu didn't stop to impart the complete spells to these heavenly devil cult's disciples. There were too many heavenly devil cult's disciples spread throughout the whole world. It was completely impossible for him to teach them all by himself, which would take him God knows how many years. There are more disciples of our sacred cult in Harmony Prefecture. The young patriarch smiled and asked, "What opinion do you have looking at this situation?" Patriarch assisted Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor to found Imperial College, colleges, and primary schools, yet our sacred cult's disciples have no place to learn. Patriarch placed the world in your mind, yet you forgot about our sacred cult. Qin Mu shook his head and said, "Patriarch should establish primary schools, colleges and Imperial College in our cult so that the disciples of our cult will not fall behind the times." The young patriarch smiled. This is what the sacred cult master has to do and not what the patriarch has to do. Young cult master, this will be your responsibility from now on. Qin Mu stared blankly and asked, "Why didn't Cult Masterly do it 40 years ago?" Cult Masterly lost himself to female charms and was attracted by Cult Mistress, so how would his eyes still have the people of the world? Qin Mu was speechless. Granny C was dragged into this again. Back then Li Tianxing was charmed head of heels for Granny C, and missed the reform which received worldwide attention. As a comparison, it wasn't good for Dao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery to conform to his reform. Even though they were the sacred grounds of the righteous path and Buddhism path, their method was that each master took in a few disciples and the master could only teach these few disciples. Whereas it was different for Heavenly Devil Cult. Heavenly Devil Cult's method was Hall Master Responsibility System. Even though the Hall Masters were strong practitioners, they weren't in charge of taking in disciples and only impart their techniques and divine arts once in a while. Heavenly Devil Cult could totally set up a few primary schools and colleges within the cult, and as for Imperial College, we can just send them to learn from Imperial College. Qin Mu calculated. Pick out outstanding disciples from our cult and let them attend Imperial College's examination, and let Imperial College help us groom our disciples. In this way, Heavenly Saint Cult would prosper even if we don't want to. The young patriarch took a look at him and sighed. Why couldn't you be born 40 years earlier? He brought Qin Mu into the city and the citizens busied to and fro like threads weaving by each other. Qin Mu couldn't help being bewildered. Could the headquarters of our Heavenly Saint Cult be situated in the city? Isn't this too eye-catching? The young patriarch took him to the city lord's manor, and when they got there, they didn't even inform anyone and just entered the manor. In the manor, there were already many higher-ups of Heavenly Devil Cult gathered. There were the Hall Masters, Cult Protector Elders, Supervisors, Guardians, and Cult Heavenly Kings. When people saw the young patriarch and Qin Mu, they all stood up to greet. Qin Mu returned their greeting and the young patriarch gently nodded his head before asking, "Is everyone here?" A Cult Protector Elder said, "Cult Mistress and Saintess aren't here yet. Heavenly King Qian of the Cult Heavenly Kings isn't here yet as well." The young patriarch nodded his head. "In that case, let us wait a while more." Not long after, a sweet and alluring voice sounded out, "Are Moor and Patriarch here?" When Qin Mu heard this voice, he felt his blood rushing to his head. All the other Hall Masters, Elders had their faces turned red with anticipation, as if they had seen their perfect dream partner when they heard the voice. The young patriarch's heart also turned slightly frisky and his expression changed. He shouted, "See, you be a little solemn." Granny C's voice then came from outside. "How boring." The young patriarch flew out of the door and rushed out. His voice sounded out, "Who let you reveal your true appearance? If you reveal your true appearance, you'll turn the whole ceremony into a great mess. Of course you will have to come in your ugly state. The child you raise is becoming the cult master. Do you want him to be charmed by you? That's better. Go in." Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief along with everyone in the city lord's manor. Cold sweat broke out on the foreheads of the few white-haired elders and cult heavenly kings as they composed themselves. Outside the door, the young patriarch and Granny C walked in. The old woman was still slightly unhappy and looked around. When she saw Qin Mu, she gave off a smile. "Granny." Qin Mu immediately went forward and pulled onto Granny C's hand. He snickered softly. Granny, I know you were in Imperial College, you didn't even change your name. Granny C was bewildered. I haven't gone to Imperial College. I have only observed you from afar. Furthermore, there was Patriarch in Imperial College, so I wasn't worried about your safety at all. Qin Mu smiled and said, Granny is still going to act? You have already been seen through by me. Your Imperial College's Saintess has arrived. A resounding voice suddenly sounded out. Qin Mu was about to say Si Yuxiang's name when he suddenly saw Si Yunxiang walking in from the door. Granny C's voice then sounded beside his ear. Saintess is even the classmate of Cult Master. You two entered Imperial College at the same time. Qin Mu was flabbergasted. He looked at Si Yunxiang and then looked at Granny C beside him again with a stupefied expression. He had always thought Granny C was Si Yunxiang, and now another Si Yunxiang had jumped out, and she was the current Saintess of Heavenly Devil Cult. He felt his mind becoming messy. The current Saintess also had the surname C, therefore, he had the first impression and kept testing whether if she was Granny C. He even purposely teased the Saintess a few times to see if she would become shy. Until last time when Si Yunxiang tested him, only did he confirm Si Yunxiang was Granny C, and now, the Saintess of this generation is much safer than the previous generation. The previous generation Saintess was simply a demoness. A white-haired elder sighed. Even though they are both from C family, the Saintess of this generation won't bring harm to our sacred cult. Granny C stared at him with angry eyes. That elder turned his head away and acted like he didn't see it. Si Yunxiang went forward and came to Qin Mu's side. She was still slightly shy and greeted sincerely. Young Cult Master, Saintess Si Yunxiang pays my respects to young Cult Master. Qin Mu immediately returned her greeting. Junior sister is too courteous. The Saintess of this generation is natural and unrestrained in her conduct. An elder sighed ruefully. Not like the one of the previous generation, plotting to kill the sacred Cult Master as a wife. Granny C flew into a rage and shouted, Old woman, I am still here, what do you old man want? That elder immediately shut up and didn't dare to argue with her. Saintess Si Yunxiang ain't someone who is easy to deal with. Qin Mu's gaze wavered and looked at this girl who looked delicate and shy, thinking to himself, she has a profound mind and the one who defeated Fozi should be her. She then came to flaunt to me to test my limits of decorum. She had long known I was the young cult master, yet she showed off in front of me. What was that for? Granny C smiled. Si Yunxiang is from my C family and Patriarch taught her personally for a few years. Patriarch found her after he had already found you, and when he met her, he even sighed ruefully that if he had met her earlier, he wouldn't have chosen you. Qin Mu looked at Si Yunxiang and Si Yunxiang also looked over coincidentally. Their gazes met and Qin Mu could see the unacceptance in her seemingly gentle eyes. Qin Mu gave a smile. Si Yunxiang should be groomed accordingly by the young Patriarch under the Cult Master's rules. He then let her take Imperial College's examination with Qin Mu in the same year to compare the two of them. Qin Mu never knew that he actually had a contest with this girl. How could she help when Qin Mu was too stunning during the examination, and had beat Taoist Ling Yun all the way to the Emperor? No matter what Si Yunxiang tried to do, it would only be overshadowed by him and no way better than him. Meanwhile, Patriarch's test was to test Qin Mu's ability in being a cult master. After testing, Patriarch had his mindset and the person he chose wasn't Si Yunxiang. Compared to her, Qin Mu was more suitable to be the sacred cult master. However, Si Yunxiang didn't accept it, therefore, after she had defeated Fozi, she came to flaunt to Qin Mu. The young Patriarch looked around and asked, Heavenly King Qian hasn't arrived yet? Not yet. The young Patriarch frowned. Heavenly King Qian always had a temper that burned with anxiety. No matter what it was, he would always be the first to be involved in. Now that he was still not here, it meant that he was already unable to come. What matter could be more important than the ascension of the cult master? There could only be one reason why Heavenly King Qian couldn't attend the cult master's ascension. Young cult master, you must treat the family of Heavenly King Qian well, the young Patriarch told him softly. Qin Mu's heart trembled slightly and was about to inquire when the young Patriarch announced solemnly, 360 halls, unfurl your flags and meet at Saint Arrival Mountain. Whoosh! The huge flags unfurled and the entire manor was completely covered. When the huge flags were furled back, The city lord's manor in Harmony Prefecture City had vanished into thin air without a trace. The place where the city lord's manor had been was only left with a piece of white land. When the huge flags that had shrouded them above their heads vanished, Qin Mu looked around and was greatly shocked. He could see that they had left the bustling Harmony Prefecture City and came to a place that didn't look like the mortal world. There was a circular sky above his head, and below his feet were mountain ranges standing tall on the illusory ground. One could not reach the sky going upwards and could not reach the ground going downwards. The green mountain was fresh green, yet no sun could be seen up in the sky, and no land could be seen when he lowered his head. This mountain seemed not to be located in the mortal world. This is Saint Arrival Mountain? Qin Mu looked around and saw range upon range of mountains. Some palace halls were hidden deep in the forest, which should be the palace halls constructed by the sacred cult. However, the young patriarch didn't bring him around those palace halls, and had instead brought him to a cypress pine. That cypress pine was verdant and lush and had been around for God knows how many years. There was a straw hut under the pine cypress, and it was very clean. The hut didn't have any signs of degeneration from the passing time. There was a large rock under the cypress pine, and the young patriarch came to the bottom of the cypress pine. The 360 hall masters, 12 cult protector elders, 8 great supervisors, 3 great cult heavenly kings, left and right guardians sat down under the cypress pine. The young patriarch signaled Qin Mu to go forward and said, "This mountain was originally in the mortal world. Back then, when the founding master of our heavenly saint cult came here, he saw a woodcutter chopping firewood. The tree he was chopping was this cypress pine. When the woodcutter chopped the firewood, he did it with a regular movement which seemed to contain boundless marvel within it. Meanwhile, when the cypress pine received a chop, another piece would grow out, returning it to its original state. When the founding master realized he met a saint, he consulted that woodcutter. That woodcutter then imparted his path to him under this cypress pine, and once he started, he continued on for dozens of years. The founding master received endless comprehension, but he still wasn't satisfied, and thus he asked the woodcutter how to become a saint. Qin Mu listened carefully, and the young patriarch paused for a moment before continuing. Woodcutter said, "If one wants to become a saint, one must first establish one's virtue, establish one's merit, and establish one's ideas in writing, which are the 3 immortal deeds." The founding master asked once again on how to attain the 3 immortal deeds. Woodcutter said, "Clear logic, clear understanding, clear teaching." The 3 clears became the teacher of all the people. Thus, the founding master was completely enlightened. The young patriarch lifted his head and looked at this cypress pine which had gone through the transformation of time. The founding master knew to become a saint, he had to first become the teacher of all people. Therefore he tidied up the saints' teaching into writings and compiled them into a record which is now known as Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures. When the founding master wrote out Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures, he had attained clear logic. He then traveled around the world and experienced a few hundred years of imparting the principles that the saint had imparted to him to others. The principles which the saint had imparted to him became his principles after he had imparted to others. From one's mouth to your ears, from your mouth to his ears, this is understanding. The founding master attained clear understanding. As for clear teachings, the founding master founded a cult to recall fondly on how the woodcutter had shown him the right path. Therefore he had called it Heavenly Saint Cult and established the cult's doctrine. The path of the saint is none other than the everyday use for common people. Anyone who does otherwise is considered heresy. To act straightforwardly, to follow the course of nature, that's the meaning of path. That's the origin of our cult's doctrine. Below them, even though all the hall masters, guardians, elders were the higher-ups, most of them were attending the cut master's ascension for the first time. Even the cult protector elders, cult heavenly kings, didn't familiarize themselves with the history. They had originally thought that some world-shaking ceremony would be held for the cult master's ascension, and never expected the young patriarch to start talking about the history of the cult. Regarding this legendary story of the founding master, they had seen records among the cult's ancient records, but they were only the bits and pieces and not as detailed and moving as how the young patriarch had described. What clear teachings meant was to impart, to teach. The founding master founded the cult was to impart the saints' teachings to everyone in the world. He managed to become the teacher of all people, having clear logic, clear understanding, and clear teaching. He established his virtue, established his words, but he didn't establish his merits and thus had not become a saint. The young patriarch continued. In his later years, he thought and thought, yet he didn't know where his merits lay. Even though the founding master had not become a saint, he had established his words for the saint and founded a cult personally, perfecting his virtue. By attaining the 3 clears and 2 immortal deeds, he had already far surpassed countless of ordinary people. Qin Mu, are you willing to inherit the founding master's virtue in words, logic, and understanding? Qin Mu bowed and cupped his fists while stretching forward. Disciple is willing to. The young patriarch gave a smile and said, in that case, the cult will belong to you. You will have to undertake this responsibility. Qin Mu replied solemnly, disciple will undertake this responsibility. The young patriarch smiled gently and said, go and sit on the rock. Qin Mu went forward to sit on the rock under the cypress pine. The young patriarch looked down and his voice reverberated deeply. This rock is Saint's Rock, the saint's seat. Back then, the woodcutter that had guided the founding master was a saint that came down from the heavens. He had no blood relations with the founding master, no benefits to gain, yet he had become a teacher and imparted skills to the founding master only because the founding master had sought to learn from him. The one who sits on Saint's Rock is the cult master, but he will also be the sacred teacher of our cult. His gaze swept over every single one of the hall masters, cult protector elders, supervisors, heavenly kings, and guardians. He ordered solemnly, all of you, do the disciples right and pay your respects to the sacred teacher. The 360 hall masters, 12 cult protector elders, 8 great supervisors, 3 cult heavenly kings, left and right guardians all maintained the disciples' rights. Saintess Si Yunxiang hesitated for a moment and could only maintain the disciples' right. Disciples pay our respects to sacred cult master. Everyone shouted in unison, which reverberated throughout the entire Saint Arrival Mountain. The young patriarch looked at Granny Si and said solemnly, Li Tianxing, the new cult master has already ascended, so why aren't you showing yourself? Aren't you going to impart the technique of our cult? Are you going to bring the sacred technique of our cult to your grave and completely bury it? Granny Si's body trembled and an ancient voice came out. Disciple follows teacher's decree. She was clearly a woman, yet she spoke like an old man with a rough voice which had an extremely overbearing awe. However, he didn't dare to be unbridled in front of the young patriarch. Granny Si came to the front of Qin Mu. Qin Mu was about to stand up when Granny Si's palm touched his forehead. Golden lights traveled back and forth in the heart of Granny Si's brows, and all kinds of sounds rang out along with the golden lights as they tunneled into the heart of Qin Mu's brows and into his mind. Cult Master Li. Someone whispered below. At this moment, the one who was in control of Granny Si's body was the previous cult master, Li Tianxing. Even though he was assassinated by Granny Si, he had also planted himself into Granny's Tao heart and turned into the devil in Granny Si's heart, waiting for the time to replace her to turn into the woman he loved most. All kinds of disorderly voices sounded in Qin Mu's mind. There seemed to be lectures from the 9 heavens above, devils whispering beside his ears, Buddhas chanting scriptures in his heart, sounding indescribably weird. The voice of the saint? His heart suddenly trembled as he thought of a possibility. The voice was the voice of that woodcutter. What Cult Master Li had imparted to him was the scriptures that the woodcutter had imparted to the founding master. Capital City, Imperial Preceptor's Manor. The official registrar immediately rushed over and reported, Imperial Preceptor, there are unusual changes in Harmony Prefecture City. The higher-ups of Heavenly Devil Cult have all gathered in Harmony Prefecture City, and there are countless of bandits there. Suddenly the city lord's manor in Harmony Prefecture City vanished into thin air and left a plot of white land. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was reading the memorials the Emperor sent to him and replied without even raising his head, Got it. The official registrar hesitated and said, Imperial Preceptor, this is Heavenly Devil Cult, the #1 sect of the Devil Path. Now such an event happened under our eyes, we can't let our guard down. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor raised his head and asked, Yun Yang, do you know who is the Patriarch of Heavenly Devil Cult? Official Registrar Yun Yang shook his head. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor told him calmly, if you knew who he was, you wouldn't be so panicky. He's none other than the Grand Chancellor of our Imperial College. Official Registrar Yun Yang's heart trembled violently and he cried out, "It's him? Imperial Preceptor, the Patriarch of Heavenly Devil Cult actually has worked as the Grand Chancellor of Imperial College for so many years. This is a rebellion. How many officials and generals has he taught over so many years? His power would probably have infiltrated the Imperial courts and even into the army. Imperial Preceptor, this matter can't go uninvestigated. Our army might already be filled with all his people." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was speechless and shook his head. "You're thinking too much. Heavenly Devil Patriarch teaches scholars. So these scholars are people of Heavenly Devil Cult? If that's the case, are you going to catch and execute me as well?" He stood up and took slow strides with his sharp gaze. "Back then when I was traveling around the world and learning all kinds of stuff, I saw each sect in the world do things each in its own way and only valued what was his own. This restricted the advancement of the divine arts, paths, and skills. Therefore, I decided to visit the big sects, hoping to break the barriers of them. The first person I met was Heavenly Devil Patriarch. He was the first person who threw away the sectarian bias and taught me wholeheartedly. He was also the one who pointed out a clear path for me." His eyes gave off a highly esteemed expression as he continued. "After that, he personally recommended me and let me bring his letter to meet Dao Master of Dao Sect. It was also because of his letter, Dao Master saw me in a different light and showed interest in me, allowing me to browse the 14 writings of Dao Sword. It was also him who made me go forward to Great Thunderclap Monastery to meet Rulai and attain Rulai's teachings. Even though he had never revealed his identity, he still couldn't hide it from me, nor did he try to." Official Registrar Yu Yang couldn't be more stunned. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, "I had invited him out of the mountain to help me take charge of Imperial College, so what was it for? It was not his ability nor his identity of the Patriarch of Heavenly Devil Cult. It was because he had this broad-mindedness. It was the first time I had seen such a broad-minded person, someone who was so pure. Therefore he was the only one who could take charge of Imperial College. Now that he had left, he should be busy with the next cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult." "The next cult master of the Devil Cult?" Official Registrar Yun Yang composed himself and said, "It's already been over 40 years since Heavenly Devil Cult has no cult master and they're actually choosing one now? Imperial Preceptor, this matter is of utmost importance. Should we report it to the Emperor?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, "Write a memorial and report this matter to the Emperor. As for the background of Heavenly Devil Patriarch, there's no need for you to say anything." Official Registrar acknowledged and reported once more. "There's news from Imperial College that the Emperor has given the decree for Gu Linwan to succeed the position of the Grand Chancellor." "Got it." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor gestured with his hand and said, "My power is too strong and it's natural for the Emperor to worry, else I would not be at ease. It's just that Gu Linwan's talent and virtue are not suitable to take up the position of Imperial College's Grand Chancellor. He is still okay being a junior protector of the Crown Prince, but he is too unfit to perform a Grand Chancellor's task. However, I can't speak much about this matter." Official Registrar pondered for a moment and said, "How should we deal with the new cult master that Heavenly Devil Cult has chosen?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said indifferent, "Flourish if he goes along, die if he goes against. There's no need for you to bother yourself over this matter. I'll meet this new cult master personally." Official Registrar Yun Yang moved out from the room. Dao Sect, Dao Mountain. Dan Yangzi went up the mountain in quick steps and came to Dao Saint Hall. A white-haired and white-eyebrows elder was sitting there on the ground and gazing at a pool of bluish-green water in front of him. Dan Yangzi immediately said, "Dao Master, unusually changes have happened in the nest of Heavenly Devil Cult." The experts of Heavenly Devil Cult all gathered in Harmony Prefecture and unfurled their huge flags, vanishing entirely with the city lord's manner. The white-haired and white-eyebrows elder opened his eyes and said slowly, "It seems like Heavenly Devil Cult has a new cult master." Heavenly Devil Cult had fabricated the history and imparted the false path under the pretense of a fake saint to bring calamity to all people. Internal conflicts arose in their cult. The saintess killed the cult master in cold blood. This violated the general principles. And the cult master married his disciple. This violated the human relationship. The cult cultivated evil skills, and there is quite a majority of them using human lives to cultivate, giving no regards to their backgrounds. They had no cult master for the past 40 years, and now a new one is chosen today. I'm afraid it ain't going to be the good fortune of the common people. Dan Yongzi asked, "What should our Dao sect do?" "Find out the identity of this devil cult master, and wait for an opportunity to get rid of him." "I received your decree." Dan Yongzi asked again. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor sets the doctrine of Heavenly Devil Cult as a goal. Thus Eternal Peace Empire is practically a large-scaled Heavenly Devil Cult, teaching irrespective of one's background. What should our Dao sect do then? Dao Master had a deep gaze and quietly looked at the pool of bluish-green water in front of him while saying, "Neither too fast, not too slow." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor has a thriving ambition, but his ability can't withstand his ambition. There were larger empires than Eternal Peace Empire in the history, and even outstanding talents than Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, yet they had all turned into dust, into great ruins. This world is much more complicated than he thinks. He would know when he runs into a stone wall and gets badly battered. Dan Yongzi didn't dare to say anything else and bowed to retreat. Reporting to Rulai, Heavenly Devil Cult's followers have disappeared without a trace in Harmony Prefecture, along with the City Lord's manor. Great Thunderclap Monastery, an old monk came to the throne hall seeking for Rulai to report. The magistrate of Harmony Prefecture belongs to Elder Yulin of Heavenly Devil Cult, who is a terrifying figure. Harmony Prefecture has already become an iron fortress for Heavenly Devil Cult. There are also people who saw the girl who had defeated Fozi in Harmony Prefecture. We guess she should be from Heavenly Devil Cult. Rulai opened his eyes and asked in astonishment, "Isn't that girl a scholar of Imperial College? How come she's from Heavenly Devil Cult?" The old monk replied, "That girl is called Si Yunxiang and only entered Imperial College this year. There was absolutely no time for Imperial College to teach her anything, so how could she have the ability to defeat Fozi? This girl comes from the Si family, which is the same family as the previous cult mistress, Si Yu. Si family is also a prestigious family in Eternal Peace Empire." Rulai asked, "In that case, is the new cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult from the Si family?" "It's not known. There's still no news of it." Rulai nodded his head and said, "Imperial College made use of the Saintess of Heavenly Devil Cult to defeat the Holy Son of our Great Thunderclap Monastery. We can't leave this matter at that. You can move down, continue to make each and every monastery scout out more information." That old monk received his decree and said, "There's also one more thing. Ma Wangshan has come out from Great Ruins." After he said these words, he turned to walk down the mountain. Old Rulai was stunned. Saint Arrival Mountain. All kinds of mysterious voices sounded beside Qin Mu's ears, which were extraordinary marvelous. Suddenly his eyes blurred and he discovered he had become a passerby walking along the mountains where a woodcutting sound came from afar. Walking towards the sound, he saw a woodcutter chopping firewood under a cypress pine. The axe of the woodcutter had a mysterious trace as it landed on the cypress pine time and time again, enthralling him and making him feel as if he could comprehend something from it. He stared blankly at the woodcutter's axe. That axe would create a deep mark whenever it landed on the cypress pine, but when the axe was lifted up once again, the wound of the cypress pine would return back to normal and no mark was left behind. When the woodcutter chopped the tree, every axe gave him a different impression. "Passerby, after standing here to look for such a long time, what do you see?" That woodcutter pulled back his axe and turned his head to look at him. "Your family has already turned into skeletons buried deep under the ground. Your children have been much older than you. Your grandchildren have already started their families and have their own children. Passerby, you have stood here and looked for 100 years. May I request teacher to teach me?" Qin Mu saw this woodcutter sit on the rock under the cypress pine, and he started to impart his knowledge to him. As he listened in intoxication, thousands of marvelous logics came flowing to him. Sitting beside the rock, he listened for dozens of years, and the unity technique of great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures was imparted to him through this wonderful lecture. That woodcutter stretched out his hand and touched the top of his head. Qin Mu opened his eyes and saw Granny C moving back. He was still in Saint Arrival Mountain. He was still in the present and did not go back to the past. This was the teaching of the previous cult masters of Heavenly Devil Cult, imbuing what the founding master had encountered back then, passing it down every generation. the fire never extinguishing. Qin Mu sat on the rock in a daze. The saint touched my head, binding my hair to pass me longevity. The unity technique of great educational heavenly devil scriptures had no words nor pictures, and it could only be passed down from one cult master to another. Numerous complicated pieces of information appeared in his mind which couldn't form a system yet. This imbue, even though had not raised his cultivation, it had brought too many things to him and he needed to sort them out to comprehend. Now he knew why the founding master had said that this unity technique could only be passed down from cult master to cult master. This was because there was no unity technique formed in great educational heavenly devil scriptures. Or one could say that the unity technique was not yet formed. The unity technique of great educational heavenly devil scriptures was hidden in the lecture by the woodcutter on the rock. However, this required the previous cult masters to comprehend the lecture by themselves. How much they can comprehend and what they can comprehend would have to depend on the comprehension of the sacred cult masters themselves. They will choose their own directions, their own wisdom, and their own fortunes. It could be completely said that unity technique comprehended by each sacred cult master of heavenly devil cult was different. Perhaps the concept would be somewhat similar, but the unity technique of each sacred cult master was definitely different from the others. 360 cult masters would have 360 cultivation methods and 10,000 cult masters would have 10,000 cultivation methods. Qin Mu's first thought was fraud. What a fraud! The legendary unity technique actually couldn't be used just like that and he had to comprehend it. His second thought was that this was then the true teaching, this was what it meant to be a sacred teacher. What you comprehended was yous and what you learned was others. Passing down techniques in heavenly saint cult had something that other sects, including Imperial College, couldn't match. The young patriarch let out a sigh of relief and looked at Granny C. Cult Master Li's voice came out from Granny C's mouth. Teacher, I'm no longer the sacred cult master. This is my chance to break the devil in my heart. May teacher not get in my way. The young patriarch's gaze wavered and he shook his head. You had turned yourself into a heart devil and planted yourself in her Tao heart. You should know that if she refined you, you will just be paving the way for her. No matter if she refines me or if I take over her, we'll both become one. Cult Master Li's voice traveled out. No matter if it's good or bad, it's my choice. When I decided to marry her, I had deeply known that she was the devil in my heart, and I had no choice but to get rid of her. By getting rid of her, only then can I put my mind down to seek the path and make further progress. I request teacher to help me achieve it. Qin Mu's heart leaped and he looked towards the young patriarch. He had long known that there was a great devil in Granny C's heart, and this devil was extremely powerful. Even the Kakura staff of Great Thunderclap Monastery couldn't purify him. Only now did he know that the heart devil was the previous cult master, Li Tianqing. Granny C killed Li Tianqing, yet he turned into a heart devil and planted himself into Granny C's Tao heart, fighting with her over one body. In his heart, he naturally wanted to help Granny C refine Li Tianqing. However, the young patriarch was obviously impartial and would not have the same thoughts. No matter whether Granny C refined Li Tianqing or Li Tianqing took over Granny C's body, either was fine for the young patriarch. Therefore, there was no need for him to interfere. After a while, Granny C got back to normal and looked cheerful as usual, as if nothing had happened. Qin Mu could see that most of the hall masters and elders in Heavenly Devil Cult didn't like Granny C. It was probably because Granny C had killed Li Tianqing and made the sacred cult have no cult master to lead them for the past 40 years. With all of them scattered like sands, they had missed numerous opportunities. Therefore, they kind of hated Granny C. The main reason Granny C had come forth to attend the ceremony of the cult master's ascension was Qin Mu. She was afraid that the people of the cult would bully him. Therefore, even if she was to face their hatred, she still had to come and support him. Imparting the unity technique or not, she didn't care at all. All she cared was Qin Mu. The young patriarch gave a sigh. Femme fatale referred to a woman like Granny C. Just because she was too beautiful, even if she didn't commit evil, people would still commit evil for her. It was hard for this world to contain such a beauty. Li Tianqing was worldly, the young patriarch was also worldly, and the others couldn't be exempted from being worldly as well. If she wanted to survive in this worldly world, she could only be Granny C and could never reveal her true appearance, not even her voice. After the ascension ceremony, The young patriarch called Qin Mu over and walked side by side with him to introduce the scenery of Saint Arrival Mountain to him. This place was Terrace of Forgotten Love, that place was Pavilion of Phoenix Arrival, the other place was Floor Under Heaven, and another place was Fish Observation Pond. He said a lot of stuff and briefed him about the history of Heavenly Devil Cult. Some pages of the history of Heavenly Devil Cult were very ancient, and if he didn't say it out, there won't be anyone that would know it after he died. Patriarch, why do we Heavenly Saint Cult use the word ascension for taking over the new cult master's position? Qin Mu asked. Isn't ascension just used for the emperor? The young patriarch looked at him and shook his head. When our Heavenly Saint Cult was at its most glorious state, we had 6 empires under us, and the emperors of the 6 empires were all followers of our Heavenly Saint Cult. The sacred cult master using the term ascension, which was also used for the emperors, was actually showing respect for the emperors. Things changed with the passage of time, and now the empire is the biggest sect. It's hard for a sect to make all the people become disciples of the sect, but an empire can make all the people in its borders the people of this empire. Qin Mu was deep in thought. The young patriarch led him up the mountain and said, Saint Arrival Mountain is the headquarters of our cult, and it's still a difficult task for you to enter the headquarters. This time you were sent into it by the 360 Hall Masters activating their teleportation flags, but as the sacred cult master, how can you not have your own ability to enter the headquarters personally? Qin Mu followed him and saw the young patriarch leading him into a great hall. The shape of the great hall could only be considered normal, and wasn't the slightest luxurious like Roland's Golden Palace. It was only constructed out of green bricks and red tiles. When they came to the inside of the hall, Qin Mu found that the decorations were also very simple. There was only a sculpture of the saint placed inside. The young patriarch came to the saint's sculpture and offered a few incenses. Qin Mu also followed him and paid respect to the saint's sculpture. The young patriarch said, Most of the elders, heavenly kings, are proficient in the art of teleportation and can return to Saint Arrival Mountain. The art of teleportation is carved on the wall of this hall, and you can take your time to comprehend it. Qin Mu looked at the wall of the palace hall and saw there was a treasure refining method on it. It was the refining method of the teleportation flags as well as the divine arts and formation runes needed to create the teleportation flags. The young patriarch said, There are different techniques carved on each and every one of our sacred cult's great halls. There's no restriction for our disciples to learn and cultivate. There's no need to treasure a shabby broom. It's up to their abilities to master them after we impart them the techniques. You need to have magnanimity and the broad-mindedness. Qin Mu understood. The young patriarch then said, The things in great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures could be imparted out, and there's no need to keep it to yourself. How much they can comprehend is up to themselves. As for the matters of the cult, the small matters will be handled by the hall masters while the big matters will be handled by the elders. As for the bigger ones, the heavenly kings will handle them. There are also supervisors to supervise all the halls, an elder of discipline to enforce the law, elder of techniques to impart techniques. Therefore, there isn't much stuff that you have to do personally. What you have to do is to control the general direction of our Heavenly Saint cult. He looked at Qin Mu and asked, So what's the first thing you are going to do now after being the sacred cult master? Qin Mu thought for a moment and said, To set up primary schools in each and every hall, forming the 360th hall, the school hall. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptors reform established primary schools and college, which created a new profession in this world. Therefore our sacred cult will need to have one more hall. Since the sacred cult has 360 halls, I would like to build 360 primary schools to teach the cult disciples the path of cultivation. The young patriarch nodded and said, For this matter, you can call the left and right guardians and entrust this matter to them. They will discuss it with all of the hall masters to pick out talents to form the school hall. This is how you control the general direction and delegate power to your subordinates to handle the matter. If you have to do everything personally, you do not have such a huge amount of energy, and it would hold back your advancement in cultivation. Qin Mu gasped in admiration. He suddenly had a queer thought. Heavenly Devil Cult didn't seem like a cult but more like an empire. If Eternal Peace Empire was a sect disguised as an empire, in that case, Heavenly Devil Cult was an empire disguised as a sect. Heavenly Devil Cult was too similar to an empire. 360 halls of all professions, and the disciples of every hall made their own livings. There was also supervisors supervising all of the halls, while the cult protector elders and cult heavenly kings formed the army which defended them against their enemies. The left and right guardian were the continued tradition of heavenly devil cult. With millions of heavenly devil cult's followers, they could completely match a small country. Of course, the followers of heavenly devil cult referred to themselves as heavenly saint cult and not heavenly devil cult. There's one more thing. The young patriarch sincerely instructed him with a grave expression. I know you like to tear things down and had made Chancellor Ba Shan watch over you. Yet he ended up letting you tear down Scholar's residence once more. You can tear down Scholar's residence, but you absolutely cannot tear down our Saint Arrival Mountain. Every hall on Saint Arrival Mountain is historical site, and there are numerous wonderful techniques carved inside the halls. Qin Mu's face turned slightly red as he muttered, I don't tear things down frequently. I understand. After coming to Imperial College for not more than 8 days, you had only torn things down twice or thrice before going beyond the Great Wall to tear things down. The young patriarch walked out of the hall. An elder of discipline was carrying their luggage while waiting outside. The young patriarch waved his hand to Qin Mu. I'm leaving. Cultmaster, there's no need to send me off. This farewell might just be the last. No matter how far you send me off, we will still have to part ways. Qin Mu shook his head and insisted, even though it might be the last farewell, what I'm giving you is my token of appreciation. The young patriarch nodded his head and walked down the mountain. Qin Mu imitated step for step and followed beside them. He had lesser interaction with the young patriarch, and he wasn't like the other elders who had seen him grow up. Even though he had only spent a short time with the young patriarch, he saw something on him that was different from the villagers. Qin Mu learned a lot. In disabled elderly village, he was always a child that never grew up in the eyes of village chief and Granny C. Meanwhile, at patriarch's side, he had learned to grow up. He had now become an adult. Although he escorted him 1,000 miles, yet they must part in the end. There weren't 1,000 miles from the top to the bottom of the mountain, and they had finally walked to the end. The young patriarch turned around and bowed. Sacred cult master, no need to see me out. Qin Mu stopped and couldn't suppress sorrow in his heart as he bowed. Farewell, patriarch. The young patriarch jumped up and leaped off the mountain. Elder of discipline also followed him down, and both of them disappeared into the vast sky. Qin Mu remained bowing for quite some time. After some time, he finally straightened up and looked at the sky above. He knew he would never see this young old man again. When Elder of discipline came back, he would probably be bringing the ashes of this young patriarch. Death was nothing to fear, entrusting your body to the mountain for all eternity. Perhaps the young patriarch's final wish was to become something like this Saint Arrival Mountain. He could be considered to have accomplished that doctrine of heavenly devil, carrying out it in his entire life. Suddenly, on top of Saint Arrival Mountain, the huge flags unfurled and the 360 hall masters left one after another. Qin Mu called Hu Linger over and returned to that cypress pine. There were still a few cult protector elders staying there, and they all greeted with smiles when they saw him walking over. Sacred cult master. Qin Mu returned the greetings. There was no one left here other than these old men and women. Granny C had also left, probably to send the young patriarch off. Qin Mu found the left and right guardians and brought up the matter regarding starting up the school hall. The left and right guardians were two middle-aged men, with one in black and one in white. Looking at each other in the eyes, the left guardian asked, "What does Sacred Cult Master plan to let the school hall teach?" Qin Mu said, "All the techniques and divine arts and great educational heavenly devil scriptures can be taught. Also, other than the school hall, we will also have to set up a floor of heavenly records on Saint Arrival Mountain. This is to gather the studies of all the sects to store them in the floor, making it easy for the disciples to browse. The simplest method is to copy all the scrolls in Imperial College's floor of heavenly records and send them to the floor of heavenly record of our sacred cult." The left and right guardians noted it down. Qin Mu said again, "Are there any brothers of the cult who are officials in the Imperial Courts? Ask them to copy down the techniques of the Imperial Courts as well, and send them to floor of heavenly records." "At your command." The left and right guardians asked for the detail and immediately rose. The men in white and black raised their white and black gowns over their upper bodies, and they disappeared along with their gowns. They should have teleported out from Saint Arrival Mountain. Our sacred cult's teleportation method sure is powerful. Qin Mu exclaimed endlessly and quickly brought Hu Linger to the Great Hall to learn the art of teleportation. Without learning the art of teleportation, it was absolutely impossible for him to leave here. As the sacred cult master, he can't be so thick-skinned to pester others to bring him out right. Great Ruins Disabled Elderly Village. Village chief was still sitting on the recliner along with Apothecary as usual, drinking their tea slowly. Suddenly Apothecary turned his body and asked, "Village chief, haven't you sat here for quite some time? It seems like you have been paralyzed here for the past 2 days, and didn't even move when the darkness invaded. You didn't return to your room to sleep? When I woke up this morning, I've already seen you lying here." Village chief squinted his eyes lazily and said, "Apothecary, your heart is in disorder. After Moore left, your heart fell into disorder." Apothecary laughed grimly. "My heart is in disorder? It's clearly your heart that's in disorder. Look at me washing up and grooming myself every day, unlike you with your messy appearance. The only difference is that you have yet died on the recliner," Village chief said. "It was clearly you who had moved me to the village entrance yesterday morning and forget to bring me back in when night fell. Isn't that because your heart in disorder? To suddenly forget something you did every day." Apothecary smiled from extreme anger. "If I had forgotten to bring you back in, can't you walk back by yourself? Don't you know how to fly back? What's the use of your exceptionally talented cultivation for?" Village chief fell silent for a moment before saying sadly, "You know that I have no legs nor arms." Apothecary was almost driven mad. This damned old man actually didn't die from the curse and monsters in the darkness after being left out yesterday night, and he actually still had the face to say he had no legs. He was about to argue strongly for what was right when he suddenly raised his head. Village chief also perked up and smiled energetically. "Friends from afar, isn't that a joy? Dao friend, you are relaxed." An old and a young man came up from surging rivers downstream and came walking towards the village. Village chief looked at Apothecary and immediately said, "Where's your comb? Stop hiding it. I know you always have a comb on you, it's in your chest. Quickly take it out. I haven't washed up for 2 days, how can I meet the guests like this?" Apothecary gave a sneer and remained unmoved. Village chief laughed. "I'm the one who was lazy to move for the past 2 days, it's my fault." Apothecary passed the comb to him and village chief used his vital chi to control the comb, combing his hair and tidying himself up. The young patriarch and elder of discipline walked over and stopped in to greet. Village chief smiled. "Disabled person is unable to return your greeting, please forgive me. Please take a seat." Apothecary watched the tea. The young patriarch sat down and gave a smile as he looked at elder of discipline who was standing beside him. "I'm no longer the patriarch of the sacred cult. There's no need for so many rules, sit together." Elder of discipline also sat down and placed the bamboo basket on his back at one side. Apothecary brought over the tea set and boiled a new pot of water. Putting in the tea leaves, he let it simmer for a moment before pouring tea for both people. "Apothecary has the southern way of drinking tea," the young patriarch smiled. Apothecary smiled. "I was born in the south, therefore, I'm used to the southern way of drinking. The northern tea is used to seeing the tea leaves bobbing up and down while the southern tea reflects the heart of people with its clear bottom. Both have their own good points." The young patriarch smiled. "No wonder the both of you oftenly sit here. Village chief, I've come to impose for a few days, are you okay with that?" Before village chief could say anything, Apothecary clapped his hands and smiled. "Great, simply great. After Moore left, this old man has almost bored me to death, sitting here like a paralyzed every day, not moving or talking." Village chief gave him a stare and said to the young patriarch, "Now that you're at your leisure, it's also pleasant to stay here for a few days to clear your mind." The young patriarch said, "I admire Dao brother very much. For the sacred cult master to be groomed by all of you, he is really outstanding and extraordinary, therefore I came to consult." The sacred cult master was a natural-born overlord body, and cultivates overlord body 3 elixir technique, resulting in a body of extraordinary abilities. My knowledge is lacking and didn't know that such a thing called overlord body in this world. It just so happens that I can consult Dao brother during these few days. Overlord Body. Village chief and apothecary looked at each other in the eyes and suddenly burst out into laughter. The two old men weren't young anymore and they laughed with their mouths wide open and tears streaming down their faces, gasping for their breaths. Overlord Body. Wahahaha. Village chief rolled off from the recliner from laughing while apothecary dropped to the ground and smacked his fists on the ground, unable to get up. The young patriarch and elder of discipline were befuddled by their laughter and elder of discipline grew apprehensive as he thought to himself, how bored are these two people usually? There was clearly nothing to laugh about yet they are gasping for their breaths from laughing. Will patriarch and I become crazy like them if we stay here for long? Village chief paused for a moment and laid on the ground to catch his breath. Apothecary pointed at the young patriarch and laughed. We even fooled the devil cult's patriarch. Ha 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 ha. Village chief broke out into a crazy laughter again while apothecary smacked the ground again. After some time village chief floated back onto the recliner while his vital chi combed his messy hair. Apothecary walked slightly further and smacked the dust off his body before going to wash his face. He then took out another comb from his chest and tidied himself up before coming up to sit down properly to apologize. Dao brothers, there are only the two of us left in the village and we are almost bored to death. Even the hen dragon has gone out to fool around with a male, and gave birth to a coop of small hen dragons. It's rare for someone to tell us a joke, therefore, we lost our composure. The young patriarch looked behind them and saw a hen dragon that was as tall as a human bringing a bunch of small hen dragons strolling around in the village. That hen dragon raised a gale as she flapped her wings. What's Overlord Body all about? The young patriarch consulted humbly. May I request both of you to be generous in your teachings? My scope is indeed a little shallow. Say no more. Village chief held back his laughter. I'll tell you. After a moment, the young patriarch and elder of discipline were flabbergasted when they knew the truth. It was like they got struck by the thunder from the heavens 100 times before getting stampeded 100 times by a herd of reckless bulls, unable to return to their senses for quite a long time. The strongest overlord body was actually the body of an ordinary person and the strongest overlord body 3 elixir technique was actually Daoyin technique that the most ordinary of the ordinary people used to strengthen their bodies. Yet Qin Mu had actually managed to cultivate this technique and thought that he was the overlord body. This was yet the crucial point. The most crucial point was that Qin Mu, who had absolutely believed it, had used an ordinary body and Daoyin technique to beat up all the other talents and geniuses and made them piss their pants in terror, which was remarkably like a true overlord body. Village chief and apothecary were very pleased with themselves as they looked at each other. Village chief whispered, "Look at their expressions, exactly like what I have expected." The young patriarch let out a murky breath and had a queer expression. So I see. However, there are indeed some problems with Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique. It's very extraordinary. Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique may be the Daoyin technique which could be commonly seen, but it indeed has some issues. However, for people who can cultivate this technique to Moor's extent is rare among rare. I can absolutely say that there's only Moor. Village chief said with a resolute expression. At least I have not seen any before. I suspect that this technique is a technique before Great Ruins, which should be not bad. And it was passed down and became the most ordinary Daoyin technique. But I'm not sure about it. Who would have thought that this technique would be cultivated by someone one day? The young patriarch's gaze flickered. Or we can say that before Great Ruins turned into Great Ruins, ordinary people could also cultivate, and this Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique was the cultivation method of those ordinary people. However, because of a great unforeseen event, it resulted in ordinary people unable to cultivate. The 4 great spirit bodies appeared after that, and become the mainstream now. Apothecary's heart moved slightly and asked, if ordinary people can't cultivate, how was Moore able to cultivate? We can't just say that it was through his hard work. There are definitely people who are more hardworking in this world than him. It also can't be justified that it was because he had used up 100 more times of resources compared to other ordinary people. There might be people who are willing to spend a huge amount of resources to awaken a mortal body. In that case, there must be something he has different from other normal people. Village chief's heart leaped and said, maybe he was an ordinary people before the Great Ruins turned into Great Ruins. The 3 of them looked at each other in the eyes and every one of them agreed to this idea. The young patriarch asked, In that case, where did he, this ordinary person before the calamity, come from? Village chief and apothecary replied in unison, "Carefree village." When they had said it, they both looked at each other in the eyes with their hearts shaking. Only Elder of Discipline's brain did not react as fast as theirs and was still puzzled, unable to take part in the conversation. "I feel that my thoughts can't catch up to theirs." Elder of Discipline had a feeling of being left out. "Carefree village?" The young patriarch's heart moved slightly and asked, "May I ask, where is this carefree village?" Village chief gave a smiled, "No idea. But if Dao friend is interested, we can go out of the village tonight to search for it." Out of the village? The young patriarch turned his head and looked at the vast great ruins. His heart suddenly felt a little tense and also had a little anticipation. He had come to the correct place. He thought to himself secretly. It had been a while since he had felt such an excitement. The old scoundrels of disabled elderly village had once again made him feel the adventure and impulse he had during his youth period. Two old men and each had one foot in the grave, along with another old man, and an old and yet not old apothecary shall explore the depths of the mysterious great ruins, at night, made him excited just thinking of it. Saint Arrival Mountain. Qin Mu instructed, "Linger, even though this mountain is the sacred ground of our heavenly saint cult, it's also my first time here. Therefore I have no idea which areas are dangerous. Don't run around and wait for me to succeed in cultivating this teleportation method on the wall, then I'll bring you out." Hu Linger acknowledged and turned around to run out of this palace hall. Qin Mu sat down in front of the wall and carefully studied the teleportation method on the wall. The teleportation method on this wall was a way to refine treasure, and the runes, formations, divine arts within were all unable to be used on their own. They must be used to create the treasure, and only then could it activate the teleportation effect. This was the reason why most of the higher-ups had created teleportation flags and teleportation clothing. When the teleportation flag was unfurled, everything that the teleportation flag covered could be teleported away, being able to bring along many people. Whereas when teleportation clothing covered one's body, one could be brought away. Qin Mu carefully comprehended the marvel of the teleportation method. After one day, he finally comprehended the teleportation method on the wall, yet he started to calculate in his heart. Heavenly Devil Cult's teleportation method relied on runes to activate the formation, and the formation to activate the divine art. Because it was too complicated, it was very difficult for divine arts to execute out directly, therefore they had to refine it into a treasure to be used for teleportation. If he could directly execute the divine art, he could also achieve the result of teleportation, which would definitely be more nimble than using teleportation flags or teleportation clothing. Furthermore, after Qin Mu had comprehended for so long, he had discovered that the teleportation method actually required a more superior calculation technique. Only with higher cultivation in the method of calculation could he master the teleportation divine art even faster. "I need an even superior algebra record." Teleportation divine art was actually a divine art constructed by algebra. The difference in direction, place, distance, and space needed one to calculate the order and rules of the runes. Every established teleportation point required a huge amount of mathematical operation. Two words: mathematical operation. What was the operation? Operation meant the sequence, evolution, change, rules of the rune formation. With evolution in the sequence of the rune formation to change the rules, only then could he have a calculation. By refining the teleportation divine art into a treasure, it was to rely on the runes and formation changes imprinted on the treasure to push the calculation, which was thousands of times more complicated than using the beads of an abacus. It could be seen as a large-scaled abacus that was strangely constructed. If he wanted to execute this divine art by himself, he would have to be able to adjust the calculation anytime and anywhere, finding out the marvel of teleportation through the complicated runes. With only 10 computation cannons, it was impossible for him to deduce such a complicated operation formula. Therefore Qin Mu felt that he needed an even more superior algebra record, and only then could he completely learn the teleportation divine art. Profound computation should be taught in Imperial College's Hall of Array Element. Hall of Array Element teaches formation skills, therefore they definitely have to use the operation of algebra. Maybe Dao's sect also has such a computation and might be even superior. Qin Mu suddenly remembered Daozi Lin Xian. When Daozilin Xian executed a dot threading the vast movements yin and yang come and go within two modes, he had used an extremely complicated algebra operation method. Yin and yang come and go within two modes required an extremely large amount of algebra operation, and without a strong mathematical operation ability, it was very difficult for him to calculate the changes in the moves and calculate out the exact location of Qinmu's weakness. Without a profound computation, it's impossible for me to learn the teleportation divine art now. Now I only know what is done but not why it is done. I should first refine out a treasure of teleportation. Qinmu put his heart down and focused on refining the treasure. No matter whether he refined a teleportation flag or a teleportation clothing, he would need cloth. Now he had only one set of brocaded clothes now. He could only make do with it. Meanwhile, using his brocaded clothes made from 6 wings golden natural silk to refine out a teleportation clothing, he would need to pull out some threads. After taking out a few threads of golden natural silk, he used the golden natural silk to sew the formation on the clothes and used his vital qi to mark the runes. He had learned to tailor from Granny C since young, therefore, he had some experience with embroidery. This wasn't difficult for him. Say, do you think the sacred cult master can rely on his own strength to leave Saint Arrival Mountain? The 3 cult heavenly kings had yet to leave Saint Arrival Mountain to prevent Qinmu from being trapped here. The 3 elders looked at Hall of Floating Light, and Heavenly King Lu stroked the mountain goat-like beard on his chin. Refining a treasure of teleportation is that simple. The teleportation method of our sacred cult could be said a divine art that causes the most headache for everyone. Heavenly King Yu nodded his head in deep agreement. The art of teleportation needs a high requirement for algebra, and it's difficult to learn it without being proficient in algebra. The sacred cult master is still quite young and shouldn't have much attainments in algebra. Let him comprehend it for a few days. Without knowing the difficulty, he won't know how to progress. Knowing the difficulty and progressing is then the heart that seeks knowledge. Heavenly King Sure was the most earnest. The sacred cult master experienced 2 little setbacks and came to the position of the sacred cult master easily. Without sharpening him on the grindstone, it would be hard for him to grow. This was also Patriarch's idea. The other 2 cult heavenly kings nodded their heads repeatedly. Do we need to create some setbacks to sharpen him? There's no need. The comprehension this time is enough to let him know what's a setback. Patriarch's idea was to wait until he couldn't leave this place, and we will then give him a teleportation flag. Heavenly King Sure smiled and said, every action from Patriarch has its in-depth meaning. Both of you definitely know how hard it was to master the teleportation divine art. So what's the point of Patriarch making him stay here to learn the teleportation divine art? Heavenly King Lu and Heavenly King Yu's eyes lighted up, and they clapped their hands in exclamation. Even though the teleportation divine art was in Hall of Floating Light and didn't prohibit disciples to comprehend it, there were not many people who were able to learn the teleportation divine art. Every hall master in the sacred cult had a teleportation flag, but these flags weren't made by those hall masters personally, and were actually spirit weapons made by the 4 cult heavenly kings. There are not many people in the entire heavenly devil cult who could master the art of teleportation and refine it into a treasure. Even the previous generation saintess Ciyu also couldn't master it. She didn't have very high attainments in algebra. Patriarch's idea was to let Qinmu go to Hall of Floating Light to learn the art of teleportation, and when Qinmu discovered that the teleportation divine arts required an extremely high attainment in algebra, it would have already been over 10 days. Then after 10 days or more, Qinmu would realize he couldn't cultivate this divine art, and could only refine the treasure of teleportation. After another 10 or more days, Qinmu would then discover that he couldn't even refine out the treasure. If this happened, the naughty and mischievous temper of this young sacred cult master could be grinded, making him know the immensity of heaven and earth. He would then learn not to perpetrate outrages and have an exaggerated opinion of his own abilities. When that time came, Qinmu would calm his heart down and comprehend the unity technique of heavenly saint cult. Then the 3 cult heavenly kings would appear and give this young cult master a teleportation flag, allowing the sacred cult master to leave Saint Arrival Mountain successful to everyone's delight and satisfaction. This was the deep intention of why Patriarch had made Qinmu remain on the mountain to comprehend the teleportation divine art. Heavenly King Yu had a grave expression. What exactly happened to Heavenly King Qian? Have any of you received any news? Heavenly King Shi and Heavenly King Yu shook their heads. Heavenly King Shi said, Senior Brother Qian has most likely come to misfortune already. He is always the most enthusiastic, yet he is still yet here. I reckon the enemies must have made a move on him to find out the location of our headquarters, to investigate who is the new cult master. With his temper, he will definitely not say it out. Heavenly King Lu's heart leaped. Senior Brother Qian has such a high cultivation. No matter how high his cultivation is, there's always someone higher than him. Heavenly King Shi said solemnly, the first-ranking high officials of the imperial courts are all cult master level existences. Dao sect, Great Thunderclap Monastery have no lack of such top practitioners. Other sects and families also have hidden experts that are fixing their gaze on our Heavenly Saint cult. Many of them had thought our Heavenly Saint cult had declined after 40 years. So who doesn't want to take this opportunity to take a bite out of us? The crucial point is, who's the enemy? Everyone fell silent. After a moment, Heavenly King Yu said, this time the cult master had ordered the left and right guardian to establish the 360th Hall School Hall. This is a big matter. The capability of this cult master is a level higher than cult master Li. This kind of vision and boldness doesn't seem like what a kid just over 10 years old should have. He seems to have more experience than an old man that had lived for over a few hundred years. It's most likely Patriarch guiding him. It's possible. The sacred cult master is out. The three heavenly kings looked towards Hall of Floating Light and saw Qin Mu walking out, opening wide the brocaded gown which he wore on the outside. This young sacred cult master suddenly covered the brocaded gown over his body and vanished with a poof. The heavenly kings were stunned and only heard a loud crash. Half of the pavilion of Phoenix Arrival had collapsed. Not good. The three heavenly kings' hearts leaped, and they immediately looked towards Pavilion of Phoenix Arrival. Under the debris of the half-collapsed Pavilion of Phoenix Arrival, a youth stood up and looked around. He felt no one had seen him and immediately raised his clothes over his body, disappearing once again. Pavilion of Phoenix Arrival is where the 6th-generation cult master received the phoenix. For a phoenix to descend on our Saint Arrival mountain, how glorious was that? Heavenly King Yu's calves and stomach trembled as he muttered, now it's half collapsed. How are we going to answer to our ancestors and our disciples? Heavenly King Shi also had a change in expression as he muttered to himself irresolutely. There is only one records of the phoenix resting on the parasol tree written by the 6th-generation cult master. It's only a biography and not a technique. I had long memorized records of the phoenix resting on the parasol tree by heart. Let's repair the Pavilion of Phoenix Arrival and find the book hall master to imitate the handwriting of the 6th-generation cult master and fill in the rest of the writing. I'll assure no one will be able to see a thing. The sacred cult master seemed to have refined a teleportation clothing, although he's not familiar with controlling it. Heavenly King Lu was astonished. He actually managed to create a treasure of teleportation. How is that possible? At this moment, there was another loud boom and the three heavenly king immediately looked towards the source of the voice, their faces turning black. The roof of Hall of Three Kings had collapsed. Their young cult master had yet controlled the teleportation clothing and had teleported above Hall of Three Kings, crashing through its roof and creating a huge hole. Hall of Three Kings was a great hall constructed to commemorate three sacred cult masters. These three sacred cult masters had lived in the same generation, and at that time the fights between sects were very bitter. Dao sect had gathered all the righteous sects in the world, as their leader, to attack Heavenly Devil cult. Back then, the old cult master died in a battle and handed the cult over to Heavenly King Qing of the four cult Heavenly Kings before he died. Heavenly King Qing then imparted great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures to the saintess back then before leading everyone to battle, fighting to the death in Jade Ripple Pool. After the saintess had inherited the cult master's position, she once again went out to battle and slaughtered Dao sect until they couldn't withstand it anymore, having no choice but to retreat. When the saintess returned to Saint Arrival Mountain, she imparted the techniques before allowing her injuries to break out, dying in a seated posture. Therefore, the next sacred cult master constructed Hall of Three Kings to commemorate them. When Qin Mu had failed his teleportation earlier and destroyed Pavilion of Phoenix Arrival, it was still fine, but now he had smashed Hall of Three Kings. That was a little overboard. Suddenly another whoosh was heard as Qin Mu covered himself with his clothes and vanished. The three heavenly kings jumped in shock and immediately chased over. Sacred Cult Master, little devil. You can't tear down anymore. The three heavenly kings' cultivations were dense, and had also cultivated the art of teleportation. Heavenly King Shi's treasure of teleportation was a flag which teleported him away with the unfurl of a flag. Heavenly King Lu had cultivated a mirror which would teleport him away when he pointed it at himself. Heavenly King Yu had created a jade pendant which he wore on his waist. With a gently pat, the jade pendant's glow would burst forth and bring him away. The three of them had dabbled into the art of teleportation for a long time, and even though they were unable to cultivate teleportation divine art, it was much easier and nimble for them to control their treasures of teleportation than this newbie. The three heavenly kings were proficient in their technique and could see where Qin Mu was about to teleport to, so they immediately headed there to intercept. Yet they were still an instant slower and pounced into empty air, falling into fish observation pond together. The few fish dragons in the pond were ferocious, and when Qin Mu had just fallen into fish observation pond, these fish dragons opened up their huge mouths yet in vain. Then the three heavenly kings teleported in just right as appetizers. The bodies of the three heavenly kings vanished once again to make the few huge fish bite into the empty air, shooting out sparks from their razor-sharp teeth colliding with each other. The few huge fish shook their heads and swam away resentfully. The bodies of the three heavenly kings appeared in mid-air, and they stretched their hands to grab Qin Mu, who was raising his brocaded clothes. Just as the three hands grabbed tightly, Qin Mu was one step faster than them, and they could only grab his afterimage. Before Patriarch left, he had warned us about the young cult master's strange hobby of tearing things down, if we couldn't catch him. The three of them activated their treasures of teleportation once again and heard three thuds as everything turned black before their eyes. Their bodies were tightly restrained, and they immediately realized something was wrong. They hurried to tremble their vital chi, and shattered the thing that was surrounding them, and realized that they had teleported themselves into the trunks of the trees while following Qin Mu. "Where's the sacred cult master?" Heavenly King Shi asked. Just as he said it, they found Qin Mu's head popping out from a huge tree which could only be hugged with two people. His body was stuck in the trunk of the tree, and he couldn't get himself free. That tree was a sago palm, and its quality was even harder than metal. Heavenly King Lu had a bad temper and shouted, "Cult master, why aren't you running anymore?" "Three heavenly kings, all of you are still here?" Qin Mu replied shamefully. "My vital chi is depleted and I'm trapped in this sago palm, unable to lift my clothing. Three heavenly kings, please help me." The three heavenly king didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Heavenly King Shi chopped down the sago palm and rescued Qin Mu out. "Cult master, you are the sacred cult master of our sacred cult and have a high position after all. You can't fool around on this Saint Arrival Mountain. The constructions on Saint Arrival Mountain are all places of historic interest and have their own meanings." Heavenly King Lu said, "Cult master, you aren't a child." When he said so, he felt something wasn't right. Isn't this sacred cult master just a child? Qin Mu was not yet 15 years old and several times younger than them. Heavenly King Lu muttered, "When I was sacred cult master's age, I played all day in mud. No, I already helped with the rice harvest. However, sacred cult master, the art of teleportation is very dangerous, and if you aren't careful, you can teleport into a restricted area, and when that happens, even gods can't save you. There are still quite some restricted areas on our Saint Arrival Mountain." Qin Mu felt a bone-chilling cold. If he was to teleport to a restricted area, he would have died miserably. "Cult master, the treasure of teleportation requires you to determine the position, and the crucial point is how to confirm the location of the transfer." The three heavenly kings looked at one another in the eyes and suppressed the astonishment in their hearts. "Cult master, you have refined the teleportation clothing and yet master how to determine the teleport location. This is very dangerous. For teleportation, you must first determine where you are and determine where you want to go. When you're about to reach the place, you must retract your vital chi back immediately, or else you will crash into something. When you try it for the first time, don't teleport too far and try somewhere nearer. Teleporting nearer makes it more convenient for you to stop as and when you like." Qin Mu's eyes lighted up. "Let me try again." Anxious expressions immediately spread throughout the three heavenly kings' faces. Heavenly King Yu hurriedly said, Cult Master, your vital chi is depleted and there's no need to for you be impatient. Furthermore, the reason why Patriarch left you here was not to let you study the teleportation divine art. He wanted to calm your heart down to comprehend unity technique. Saint Arrival Mountain is very serene and there are no noises from the outside world. If you leave here, you would probably take 1 to 2 years to completely comprehend unity technique. Qin Mu's heart was enlightened. There was indeed a meaning to why Patriarch had left him behind. He had been thinking of refining a teleportation clothing for the past 2 days to leave this place and had yet thought of Patriarch's intention. I was too impatient to succeed. Qin Mu expressed his thanks calmly. Thank you, Heavenly Kings, for showing me the right path. We don't deserve it. The 3 Heavenly Kings immediately returned his greeting solemnly. Heavenly King Shur said, Cult Master has outstanding wisdom, and will definitely have a great gain by staying here for a few more days. Qin Mu calmed his heart down and walked towards the pine cypress. He sat on the rock and diligently comprehended the scriptures the woodcutter had passed on to him. The 3 Heavenly Kings let out sighs of relief and Heavenly King Shur muttered. Patriarch left Cult Master on Saint Arrival Mountain wanting to grind his temperament. Cult Master's temper is indeed naughty and mischievous and Patriarch must not have expected Cult Master to cultivate the teleportation method to such an extent with such a fast speed. Am I right? The other 2 Heavenly Kings had a weird expression. The young Patriarch's idea may be good, but who would have thought that straight after he had left, Qin Mu had realized that it was impossible for him to cultivate the teleportation divine art now, and had to be proficient in algebra. And what was more, Qin Mu realized immediately that he could refine a treasure of teleportation first. It was only the 2nd day and he had already come out with a teleportation clothing to teleport here and there, tormenting the 3 Heavenly Kings. Heavenly King Lu shook his head. How wise is Patriarch, how could he not think of it? He must have expected it, therefore. He had let the 3 of us guard this place. After a moment, the 3 Heavenly Kings sighed in unison. Patriarch definitely didn't expect so. The 3 Heavenly Kings started to fret and grow apprehensive. This sacred cult master was utterly mischievous, yet he was so intelligent. It was pretty impossible for them to chasten his temper. With the speed of Qin Mu, he just needed to practice a few more times and he could master the technique. When that time came, how could they make him stay to chasten his mischievous temper? After a moment, Heavenly King Yu smiled. We seem to be wasting our time on an insoluble problem. The other 2 Heavenly Kings looked at him and gave him a look of inquiry. Heavenly King Yu smiled and said, Sacred Cult Master is so clever, so let him play crazily if he likes to play crazily. Since he has a mischievous temper, let him be mischievous. He is the Cult Master after all. Let us not care about the rest and just care about cleaning up his mess. To clean up his mess nicely is what we should do. Heavenly King Shur said. That's the only thing we can do. Be that as it may, if the Cult Master continues to play around crazily, I feel it's still better for him to leave Saint Arrival Mountain earlier and let him return to torment Imperial College. The 3 elders came to Pavilion of Phoenix Arrival, and became masons to repair Pavilion of Phoenix Arrival. They then went to Hall of 3 Kings to repair the roof. Heavenly King Lu went for a long trip and brought Book Hall Master back after 2 days to get him to forge records of the phoenix resting on the parasol tree on the walls of Hall of Phoenix Arrival. After everything was settled, the 3 Heavenly Kings let out sighs of relief and looked at one another in the eyes. The Sacred Cult Master's perception through meditation this time could at least let us relax for half a year, am I right? With the degree of the Saker. D. Cult Master's monstrosity hard. Under the cypress pine, Qin Mu had been sitting on Saint's Rock for a few days. When he was thirsty or tired, the little fox would come running over and plucked a bunch of fruit from somewhere he didn't know. Qin Mu and Hu Linger would then eat the fruits together. Qin Mu comprehended for over 10 days and experienced the woodcutter's lecture for over 10 times, yet he always felt it was hard for him to comprehend unity technique. Thus he gradually got impatient. Let's not eat fruits today. I've been eating fruits every day and my mouth feels bland. Qin Mu stood up from Saint's Rock and asked Hu Linger, We'll eat meat today. Linger, is there any things to eat in the mountains? Hu Linger cheered. There are musk deer in the mountain. I saw a herd of musk deer and wanted to lay my paws on it, but this is Saint Arrival Mountain, so I didn't dare to meddle around. Qin Mu was excited and said, Let's hunt one. Not long later, A human and a fox were roasting the meat of musk deer. Hu Linger took out some salt from her own little backpack and sprinkled it over the meat, making it fragrant and appetizing. They were simply starved and they devoured the musk deer cleanly. Hu Linger laid on her back while rubbing her bulging tummy, full of satisfaction. Qin Mu was also stuffed and he stood up to walk a step or two, executing his Overlord Body 3 elixir technique to speed up his digestion. His footsteps grew faster and faster as he started to cultivate the way he had cultivated in disabled elderly village unknowingly. Suddenly he executed Thunderclap 8 strikes and every punch and palm exploded the air, causing thunder to resonate out. With his fist as a hammer, he executed Mute's hammer skills to smash down on the air that was like a huge drum. He, on the other hand, was like a giant beating onto the drum, shaking the trees in the foresting from the dull booms. Qin Mu's move changed again as he executed his leg skills before changing it into spear skills, sword skills, then knife skills. The speed of his sprint grew even faster and he actually gathered his vital qi into a brush to paint in the air, abandoning all restraint to his heart's content. Suddenly he executed Secrets of Moving Rain, and the rain was like swords and strings, mixing the sounds of strings among the sound of rain. He then changed to Secrets of Rolling Thunder and Flames, which rumbled with thunder and balls of flame exploding in all directions. Another ball of flames gradually rose into the sky and turned redder and redder as though it was a setting sun. The flaming sword chi shot off in all directions as he executed Sunset Sword skill. His vital chi then changed and he turned into a sprinting white tiger which split rocks with his claws. He then executed the 7 writings of creation. Spirit creation technique to change his form, Heavenly God creation technique to change his technique, Heavenly Devil creation technique to change his appearance, Human King creation technique to change into dragon, Ghost creation technique to change his soul, Earth Aeon creation technique to change his spirit, and Pre-Celestial creation technique to change his neonate. He then executed all kinds of spells, fist skills, sword skills, and knife skills in great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures. Unknowingly, he had sunk into a marvelous state where the woodcutter's voice sounded on and off in his mind. Sometimes it was deep and low, sometimes it was loud and clear, and sometimes it was muffled. All kinds of mysteries flooded his mind again and again, filling up his mind before flowing out from his hand to become marvelous moves. There was only delight in his heart as he unleashed to his heart's content. No matter what spell, divine art, or sword skill, he just unleashed them all regardless of their order. He only felt his heart becoming deranged. If the technique of great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures didn't flow, therefore he changed it. If the circulation of Overlord Body 3 elixir technique was rough, he would go with the flow and adjust the direction of the vital chi circulation. To act straightforwardly, to follow the course of nature, that's the meaning of path. At this moment he finally had understood this sentence deeply. No matter what his predecessor had left behind, no matter what great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures or Overlord Body 3 elixir technique was, he would just let the vital chi circulate with the flow, executing all kinds of moves and divine arts. Circulating his boundless vital chi, however, he liked no matter if it was to the standard or not. The more it was like this, the marvel of Woodcutter's lecture on the rock allowed him to understand even more and comprehend even more marvels. The 3 heavenly kings were also astonished and immediately came out to have a look, only to see sparks shining out in the forest of Saint Arrival Mountain from time to time. The rumbles of thunder sounded while the ground rolled over and over. As the air vibrated with the knife lights and sword shadows, the forest collapsed in pieces. The 3 heavenly kings' expression changed hugely and Heavenly King Shur suddenly shouted, "This is bad. The sacred cult master is sprinting towards the sacred tree." The elders immediately rose into the air and landed in front of the cypress pine, only to see Qin Mu unleashing all kinds of moves and divine arts to his heart's content as if he had gone crazy. His vital chi even showed apparitions of all kinds of gods and devils. No matter if it was the righteous path, devil path, or Buddhism path, he just executed all of it. No matter if it was the divine arts unique to White Tiger spirit body, the defensive methods unique to Black Tortoise spirit body, the Tempest of Green Dragon spirit body, or the True Fire of Vermilion Bird spirit body, they were all executed in his hand to his heart's content, making the 3 cult Heavenly King flabbergasted. Unity technique. Heavenly King Shur muttered, "He has comprehended it, he has comprehended it."